welcome to episode 38 of The Descent is Easy. My name's Michelle.
And I'm Maryse.
And today we're talking about A Walk in Darkness.
Yes, we are.
A lot of darkness.
A lot of darkness.
Not so much walking.
No.
I suppose they walked through the Institute a lot.
They did, yeah, I suppose so.
Up and down corridors.
Yeah.
But before that, we've got some catching up on Salt in the Wound from last week. We've had a bunch of write-ins on stuff that we really should have picked up on last week, and we didn't.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was a lot of stuff to cover last week.
Yeah, stuff happened.
Yeah, it did.
We had a write-in from Malik Cray's author, Amelia, who was talking about the war room scene and about the fact that Alec must be aware of the kill order protocol in regards to rogue Shadowhunters, and that it would be his job to execute said kill order.
Yeah.
Which was a really daunting thought.
Absolutely.
That, hadn't occurred to me at all.
Nor me, and obviously it's particularly poignant in light of this week's episode. That scene had an awful lot to unpack in it. And the things going on with Alec were kind of myriad and tenfold. There was so much going on in his response. But yes, absolutely.
That's just adding another really, really scary layer.
And the fact that we get the kill order sort of textualised by the end of the episode absolutely is something that we should have linked back to the beginning. I think it's another symptom of that law versus family thing that we've seen from Alec so many times. And obviously this is a more extreme iteration of that. But plays right into consistency of Alec's character arc and Alec's continued character arc.
Yeah, and I think you said in your discussion with Amelia over this point on our website, the fact that there aren't many things that Alec isn't thinking about at all times.
Yeah.
And there aren't many risks that he isn't assessing at all times.
Yeah.
And yeah, he would be thinking about this.
Yep.
I really want to go back and rewatch that scene, just because I really like torturing myself with that in mind.
Yeah, totally.
Another thing that Amelia commented on was our discussion over Magnus's reaction and my kind of struggle with seeing hope in his expression and kind of failing to articulate it.
Yeah.
And one of the things that she talks about is Alec's history of anger and kind of misplaced aggression in regards to his parabatai being missing and his family being in danger.
Totally.
Which is obviously done to Clary, but he also did directly to Magnus in 201.
Yep.
When Magnus tries to calm Alec down and Alec completely blows up at him. And also his worry over Isabel in 209 with the Raphael situation and
totally.
the things of, what did Magnus know, what didn't he know? And he says that Magnus' reaction shows surprise and probably some hope that Alec may not hate or blame him at the end of it all. And that might be where my struggle with hope is coming from. And I do think it's really interesting the changes we see in Alec from 201 to here. Kind of in 201, Jace was gone and there was nothing that could console him.
Yes.
And he's now willing to take comfort and to take Magnus's help and to seek Magnus's help in a way he wasn't back then.
Yes, for the most part. I kind of disagree that he's taking comfort from Magnus. I think Magnus and Alec are kind of 100% failing to be a comfort to each other at the moment. I think there's something that's kind of interesting going on in the way in which they're failing to comfort each other. I mentioned in their hug in the hallway scene last week that Magnus is kind of a million miles away from that aspect of their relationship, that Alec has just been given truly awful news. This is his parabatai being in sort of mortal peril, and there is nothing in Magnus that moves to comfort Alec in that.
Though the fact that Magnus isn't given the comfort doesn't mean that Alec isn't looking for comfort or willing to accept it. Because we both weren't entirely sure why Alec is actually running after Magnus in that scene.
Yeah.
And we're not saying he's running after him to have a cuddle.
I think for the most part, the sense I got was that Alec was running after Magnus for Magnus's benefit, not for Alec's. The emphasis in that scene was on Magnus being comforted, not the other way around. And there was a fairly minimal amount of Magnus being comforted, because Magnus wasn't in a position to take comfort.
No, I mean, he wasn't in a right state of mind, really.
Just I think there's something that's interesting going on with the lack of comfort of one another in this whole sequence. There's a real missing each other on comfort, which is obviously part of this thing that we've been talking about in regards to their argument, their fight, which is that they're having two completely different conversations. They're emotionally continents apart from each other and have been in their relationship for the past few episodes, and I think that sort of plays into it in regards to bad things happening and them failing to console each other properly as well.
And there isn't enough time for a moment of stillness between them. But I just think both that scene in the corridor and the scene on the balcony in today's episode, I think there's just a hint of Alec running after Magnus just so they could be together. Even if he didn't have a complete sense of what was going to happen, what it was going to lead to, but literally let's not let him walk out of this and not talk about it. Let's catch him up and talk about something. I'm not sure what, but let's take a moment.
Yeah.
It's interesting in this episode as well, because Magnus makes Alec leave the study to have the conversation, to then come straight back in and follow up the conversation with Izzy.
Yes.
Because, of course, he doesn't know how Alec's going to react. But it is also a moment of just it being the two of them.
Yeah.
I completely see what you're saying about the lack of comfort, but I think a lot of that is just because there isn't time and space for it.
See, I think it's more deliberate. We've called the show out before for not really allowing enough space around crises for there to be any moment of character dealing with it, accepting it, coping. Yeah. And I don't think that's what's happening here. There are several scenes in this episode where there could have been comfort, there could have been consolation, there could have been contact emotionally rather than actually necessarily cuddles, but cuddles too. But they haven't done that. They are holding themselves very separately from one another, and that's narratively deliberate, I think.
Yeah. No, I think a lot of that is still just about the state of mind that Magnus is in.
I think it's also the way in which Alec particularly deals with crisis is by donning his steely suit of armour more tightly and reinforcing it. You know, he hardens his spine in crisis. That's what he does. I think we're getting quite a lot of that in this episode, but in last episode too. You know, I think there's quite a lot of Alec sort of deep breath compartmentalising because there's a problem to deal with. There's a situation to work and things need to be done. Actions need to be taken. Yeah. And maybe this is also from Alec a bit of the learning curve that last time Jace was gone, he fell apart. He fell apart completely. And it didn't work out. He wasn't able to help that way. And maybe part of what's gone on is that he's learned something. You know, he's grown in himself, that he's trying really hard not to do that this time because he didn't succeed last time. You know?
I think that's kind of the important bit, isn't it? It's like he tried, but it wasn't him that rescued him in the end.
No. He freaked out. He tried to help, and by doing so meant that Magnus and Isabel were not looking for Jace anymore. They were focused on helping him. He took the attention away from the search for his parabatai and put it on himself. That's the last thing Alec wanted to do in that moment, and maybe this is a lesson learned. Like, this is something that he's trying to do differently now. But obviously this episode plays into that conversation too, so maybe we should kind of put a pin in that and circle round to it at some point later on.
Things are going to happen to his learning curve that are going to make me really sad. Yeah. And the other thing that we didn't talk about last week was from a write-in via email from Maryse, who talks about the graveyard security.
Yeah.
Which we were quite busy mocking, that happens to me a lot. I'm kind of busy mocking something and I'm missing the bit where I could talk about it. Sorry about that. But she had some gloriously gruesome thoughts. Mainly that Iris Rouse almost resurrected Jocelyn with a bit of her hair, and surely there's people out there that would want to bring Valentine back. And they've got all sorts of bits of him. And that with werewolf teeth and vampire hair being used in magic potions, just imagine what you could do with Nephilim body parts.
Yeah.
Both of which is like, yeah, dude.
Yes.
And she was justifying the slow security response by saying that the only thing you're doing is digging up a grave, which takes quite a long time. And we have to assume that Jay's entering with Mimi's thumb didn't alert security. The thing that alerted security was Alec, Clary and Izzy entering the graveyard.
Yeah.
And to be fair, from there to them arriving, that was pretty sharp.
It was pretty sharp. I mean, it has to be said that in terms of our mocking of the graveyard security, that is all totally headcanonable, but nothing that's actually suggested in the text of the episode.
Oh, no, totally.
I am absolutely on board with the idea that in a world in which we can use vampire hair and werewolf teeth and whatever else in potions ingredients, that absolutely there are uses for Nephilim body parts also. I was really interested by her point that the clave may not just forbid these things, but moderate these things in a kind of donate body to science, because even at death your duty to the clave isn't done.
Yes, absolutely.
I was really intrigued by that thought, and it's something that Jace definitely says in either the book, the film, or the TV show, and I can't remember which one it is.
Because they're all the same, except not.
Because certainly at the beginning they're all the same, those sort of opening scenes are all the same, but something about your duty to the clave not being done even in death, because the bones of the Nephilim resting in the City of Bones are what power the Silent Brothers or something.
Yeah, I think it's part of the protection of the City of Bones. And yeah, he says this really, really dramatic, you serve even in death.
Right.
Kind of thing. And I think it's book and movie.
Anyway.
I'm not sure.
We'll take it as headcanoned anyway, because it makes a great deal of sense.
But yeah, no, she makes some really interesting points in regards to why wouldn't you just cremate the bodies if you were worried about the fact that you could raise people from the dead or use bits of part angel in spells, and that lack of cremation might be for religious reasons, personal reasons, the way it is with, all of us. So yeah, no, I think absolutely headcanon, but really interesting headcanon.
Yeah, I mean, she got me to thinking about that idea of cremation or interment as part of like a religious tradition. The kind of question I had was that the reason that various religions come with either burial traditions or cremation traditions or whatever else is largely to do with the context and the environment from the point at which the religion was codified.
Yep.
In Judaism, you have to bury the body within a very, very short space of time. I think it might be 24 or 48 hours. I apologise, I'm not an expert by any stretch of the imagination. But I have to assume that that's because they came from a very hot climate, and in order to get the bodies in the ground before they started to decompose...
And minimise spread of disease and everything.
Minimise spread of diseases, etc., etc. So these things are religious, they are traditional, they are based in spirituality, but they're also practical. They also have origins that root in practicality. So the idea that aspects of Nephilim may be used in certain magical spells or ceremony is kind of interesting to consider if they are buried, because that kind of means that they want to preserve the option to use those Nephilim parts in. And Maryse suggested that there might be like less grisly, more benevolent uses for body parts, as there are for vampire hair and werewolf teeth, that mean that they want to keep that option open for some Nephilim, most Nephilim, whatever else. Obviously one has to run the sort of risk analysis of keeping those body parts around for more nefarious uses. Yeah. But, if there are blood protection spells or whatever else that might be utilised with bits of dead Nephilim.
And possibly tracking spells.
Yeah, totally.
In a kind of genetic lineage.
Sure, why not? Yeah. Anyway, really interesting thought.
Though, on the practical basis, you would think that cremation is totally the way to go, because Shadowhunters die a lot.
They do.
They're going to run out of bloody burial grounds.
They do. Though, again, if that thing that Jace said, maybe in the book and maybe in the film and maybe in the show, is to be taken into consideration, obviously their bodies have use after death that they possibly couldn't achieve with a cremated pot of ashes.
Totally, yeah. So there's also that really, really messed up thing that's now going through my head about using their bones in the City of Bones. Do you get the bones out of the dead body, or do you bury the dead body and then dig it up when you safely can assume that the flesh has decomposed around the bones?
I don't know. I think that's probably a direction of contemplation we don't want to go in.
Okay. This is like when you wouldn't let me talk about eyeball gouging last episode.
You're welcome, listeners.
Yeah. So thank you very much, Maryse, for that slightly disturbing food for thought. Which was continued by a cat's write-in this week as well, where she got a little bit evil and overexcited by imagining if Alec ever went over to the dark side in regards to his fierce and scary stare at Simon.
Yeah.
Which really just made me think about how sad it is that we didn't get possessed Alec. That we played it for the shock and reveal of him having been the one to kill Jocelyn, rather than actually showing us possessed evil Alec, because that could have been good.
Possibly. Yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting thought. I mean, I have kind of difficulty with it just because he's such a, Hufflepuff, for lack of a descriptor.
That hiatus episode coming at you anytime soon.
Absolutely. There's something that's really fundamentally honourable, and that guilelessness, it means that an Alec who had dark, suspect purposes is quite difficult to imagine,
Yes, it would have to be an actual evil demon possessing him rather than a demon that brings out his darkest sides, as it were.
Though equally there's a kind of interest in contemplating the way in which somebody like Alec might turn evil, that kind of purity of intention and drivenness.
Yep.
And
all I'm seeing is rooftops and suicide attempts.
Well, there's that.
No, Cat. We're not going there.
But if that was to exhibit itself externally rather than internally, it's interesting to contemplate what that would mean. There was a really interesting discussion discussion that I think I listened to in a podcast at some point, and I'm really sorry for not having, any of the facts there. But it was kind of contemplating the way in which, a dark Hufflepuff, a dark Ravenclaw, a dark Gryffindor might exhibit themselves.
Okay,
like,
right.
How do you take somebody whose fundamental traits are not blind ambition, but these other things?
Loyalty and bravery and, yeah.
Right, and how might that exhibit itself in a dark way? Interesting to contemplate, not something we should discuss now because, this is a Shadowhunters podcast. But
Your Harry Potter geek is showing.
Well, that's what we're showing. But I think Alec very much plays into that kind of conversation, that he's not somebody who you can easily imagine exhibiting that kind of dark intent.
Well, this is why it was so striking last week.
Yeah.
And why it makes me sad that we don't get more of it, because it is so striking. But yeah, no, I think you're right. It would be difficult to imagine, but could be fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely.
To see them pull off if they ever went there. I mean, obviously, season 4 is going to be all butterflies and rainbows, because things have been rough.
Things have been rough, yeah.
So, ice cream and days on the beach.
Yeah.
And there was also an interesting thing that I picked up from Scarlet77 Cream 66 on Tumblr in regards to Alec and Magnus and Jace as a... This has been keeping fandom busy this week. In which he says, love is active, not passive. Alec and Magnus love people actively, not based on whether the people are deserving of their love. The best love is always given in spite of what is deserved. And it's one of those things that made me think, there's this quote that's kind of been popping up throughout my life on a regular basis. Love me when I deserve it the least, because that's when I need it the most. Like, all of this is kind of really interesting with what's going on with the three of them at the moment.
Yeah.
And certainly with what's been going on in fandom over the last week.
Yes, absolutely.
And I think we're going to get into it in the actual episode.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to highlight it at the beginning.
Yeah.
And then we've had 2 write-ins for quotes that are to die for. Just as a reminder, your hint was...
Advice that may land later.
And your quote was...
Think outside the box.
And my hint was... philosophical and aquatic. And my quote was, of course, I like watching the waves, it helps keep my mind off the bad things that are happening on land. Kat got both of our quotes.
Congratulations, Kat. Well on the way to your second quote card.
It's doing alright. And All My Fantasies are third person got my quote, and for you chose What About a Variation on a Healing Spell.
Also sound advice, which may circle back to...
Which was the other one, absolutely. All My Fantasies are third person is now also 1 rune away from her full card.
Ooh!
And I really hope that All My Fantasies has got a dog. Because this weekend I'll be drawing both Lygia Jellies and Kat's dogs for their price.
You don't have to have a dog on My Fantasies. That's not necessary. You can have her draw anything you like. That's the deal.
That is true.
It doesn't have to be a pet of any kind.
I just wanted a puppy weekend. Is there anything else that you wanted to catch up on, or shall we get started on the episode?
I think we can get into it.
Right, so this is episode 8 of season 3, A Walk into Darkness, which was written by Jamie Gorenberg and directed by Ari Sandel, and first aired on the 8th of May 2018. Anything you want to say about the episode up top?
Only that I have one major frustration with this episode in terms of structure and pacing, which is that I really, really wish they'd done all the Mindscape bits as one continuous piece.
Bottle episode! I said it last week. They didn't listen to me.
No.
You know why? Because they recorded it 6 months ago.
Yeah. I'll talk about it when we get there, but just in terms of the structure of this episode, which I think mostly is better than we've had the past couple of episodes. I think it's a little overstuffed, but I understand the reasons why, and I'm not sure what we could have sort of pushed out of this episode to make a bit more room. It feels like everything that was happening was quite necessary, but I really, really wish they'd had the Mindscape bit as a continuous sequence.
I take your point, but I must say, this episode absolutely wrecked me. Like, I was crying through most of it.
Yeah.
And we're talking ugly crying, not I'm watching this baking competition and you've lost and I liked you a lot crying, but ugly crying.
The content is really great, but it wrecked you, and I think it could have wrecked you better.
I'm sure, but I went through a lot of tissues this morning. And then I watched it again to write my notes, and I cried. And then we watched it again when you came home from work, and I nearly cried. And I tried to be a brave girl.
You're a very brave girl.
I was. And on a shallow note, the other thing I want to say up top is that Alec is so fantastically frowny and beautiful in this episode. His eyebrows are delightful.
Good eyebrow work from Mr. Daddario this week.
We open up the episode in the Church of Talto, where Luke and Simon are still investigating. Luke is still insisting insisting that Ollie is the only one out of the 33 disciples that matter. Just to interrupt our scene-by-scene breakdown really early, I have so many problems with Luke and Ollie in this episode.
Oh my god. Well, mostly I have issue with Simon kneeling down and saying, look, there's these mundanes that I turned into salt, and Luke going, we don't have time for that, we need to find Ollie.
Yeah.
We don't have time for the fact that you just killed 2 people.
Yeah. And also, obviously you've killed 2 people, that's horrendous and guilt, but also your mark has changed and it now turns people into salt.
Yes.
Or alternatively, disciples turn into salt. This might bring us somewhere.
Right.
Who knows?
Right. I don't know what's
so problematic.
What's going on. I gave this quite a lot of thought because, I bridled at Luke's, we don't have time for that, we need to find Ollie. The line literally made my hackles rise.
I'm getting to a point where I don't think that he deserves Maryse.
Well, yes, putting that to the side, the only sort of way I've found of talking myself into a justification for Luke's attitude is what we're doing with Luke and Ollie as partners in an episode where we're also discussing Alec and Jace and Isabel sort of as partners.
Yeah.
That it plays into the same thing, that you have to get your partner out.
Yeah, and we've had it highlighted last episode when he says, it doesn't matter, she's my partner, I'm responsible for her. So there's a guilt element, but I'm just not feeling enough guilt from Luke for him to be so distracted by it that he's dismissing Simon.
Yes. My problem, actually, is I think that we are being cornered into scapegoating Luke for what I think is actually a problem the show is having rather than a problem that Luke is having. I would not mind if Luke's fixation in this instance was on Ollie. I could justify that by Luke's guilt, by Luke's commitment to their partnership, by Luke's feeling of responsibility. I could justify all of that. My problem is that the show is not acknowledging anybody except Ollie as a victim in this circumstance.
Yes, yeah. And I think on top of that, Luke then completely abandons Ollie to go after Clary.
Yes.
Which again is understandable, but then means he wasn't so distraught and fixated on Ollie to justify his dismissal of Simon.
Right. I think if we'd had more of a sense from maybe Luke anyway, just because he was, as a police officer, the kind of vehicle for the missing mundane investigation, if we'd had something more of a sense from him as to his feelings of responsibility for the scale of this disaster, for how awful all of this was, for their determination to put it right, if we'd had more of a sense of that, then it wouldn't be so problematic when Luke himself fixates on Ollie after Ollie is taken. The problem is that we're using Luke only as a filter for concern about Ollie. We're not getting any concern for anybody else from anybody except for Jace in this episode. And that's one line, and which is fine as far as Jace is concerned in that scene because he's got, quite a lot of things to be worrying about. But from the show generally, we're just not giving any weight to any of the other disciples. And there's a couple of moments in this episode where that's really apparent.
Yeah.
And it's just really difficult.
Which I think is also where my other problem with Ollie is coming from, is that we get other disciples in this episode, they're mindless robots. And then you've got Ollie running around being delighted at finding herself at the top of a skyscraper after Lilith's moved their house.
Totally.
And worrying about Lilith and being, sweet and warm and cuddly. And where does she get all the emotions from?
I don't know.
It is so weird. And the only reason is just because Alexandra Odolis has got a title credit.
Yeah.
And, she's not doing anything wrong.
No, it's not her
That's
fault.
what she's being asked to do. I just completely disagree with what she's being asked to do.
Yeah, totally. But what I had to come down on in regards to thinking about Luke in this episode is that ultimately my anger with Luke over his fixation on Ollie is misplaced. That my anger should be at the show for the way the show is handling the disciples, because I think Luke's fixation on Ollie is justified. But I don't think the show's fixation is.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. The other problem I have with this opening bit, why salt?
I don't know. There's an answer to that question. I have absolutely no idea. I got nothing. I mean, salt is...
it's quite magical. It's quite a magical thing, isn't it?
Yeah, ritualistically significant.
Yeah. And I'm assuming that all of that fixation with salt came from back when, salt was worth its weight in gold.
Yeah, and it purifies. Salt purifies.
Though they never use honey. I would like it if Simon turned the people into honey. Sticky.
Gloopy.
The only other thing that I was kind of thinking about with the salt, which kind of plays into an issue I'm going to have later on in this episode, in regards to the Mark of Cain, and it being textualised as the Mark of Cain, and, you know, I'm assuming Cain and Abel.
Yes, I assume so, yeah.
That's kind of the only Cain I know. And one of the punishments that Cain received for killing his brother was that the blood he spilled, his brother's blood, salted the earth.
Yeah.
Like, ruined the earth so nothing would ever grow there again.
Yeah.
Which is, you know, kind of what you do with salt.
Kind of, yeah.
That thing.
Yeah.
But I really have to shoehorn this.
Yeah, I think we may get a little more insight into both what and where the disciples come from in terms of Lilith and Edom and all that a little later. We may also get some more insight into what the Mark of Cain is about a little later. So I kind of think this may make more sense later on. I'm comfortable with the salt being symbolic in some way and us remembering that Simon turned these people into salt. You know what I mean? It's like
later on.
There are certain things in stories that trigger you to sort of go, oh, I must pay attention to that because that's going to matter later.
Yeah.
You know, right back at the beginning when Clary and Dot were playing around with a pile of tarot cards, there was no way that those tarot cards were not going to be of some significance later on. You know, tarot matters. Tarot is significant and symbolic and has a huge amount of symbolic weight in narrative. Salt is the same thing. You know, you don't explode people into salt without it meaning something, being significant in some way. So let's circle back to that when we've got more information, maybe.
Fair enough. Shall we try and get further than 1 minute into this episode?
Let's try that, yeah.
Okay. We go over to Lilith and Ollie, where Lilith tells Ollie that the daylighter could ruin her plan, and she seems genuinely worried about this.
Yes.
This is the first time we've seen her actually quiver in her stylish boots. Ollie says that they should leave, Lilith says that no, and then they leave.
Well, they stay still and the building moves.
It looks like so much harder work than Magnus made it look like.
Yep.
Magnus is better than you.
Yes. I mean, the special effects on this aren't fantastic.
No.
The kind of wind and red light thing looks a little 70s B horror movie.
Yeah, and the bit where Ollie's clutching to the Jonathan box. That almost looked like the dream sequence, like they put that same foggy filter on it.
Yeah.
It's surprisingly cheap. Because I think generally the visual effects are pretty good in Shadowhunters.
Yeah.
But they do manage to leave before Simon and Luke step out of the elevator into an empty basement where stuff formerly was.
Yeah.
And we cut over to the Judge Talta up on a rooftop and Ollie running outside in delight because, she's so high up and she can see all of New York. She turns around and says, how did you do that? And Lilith says, no one will stop me from repeating my villainy taglines over and over and over.
Yeah.
I feel so bad for Anna Hopkins.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure she's quite good at stuff.
She is quite good at stuff. Like, I think we have seen that she is good. Like, there is no question that her performance has been largely effective.
But this is tough.
It is tough. I kind of think they're struggling a little bit with Lilith, particularly in contrast to Valentine and Jonathan last season. You know, I talked a little bit about that when we were discussing Lilith kissing Jace a couple of episodes ago, that she kind of needed to demonstrate her villainy because up till that point it had been really easy to sort of forget that she was villainous. And I think that's true, but I think what that's part of is the way in which she's sort of hamstringed. Like, she's very, very passive. She's almost impotent. For something that is as powerful as she is, she's not really getting out and doing very much. And I don't know whether that's intentional because we'll at some point in the next big conclusion see her step out being the terrifying thing because
absolutely.
we have not yet seen her do that, which is possible. If that's not what they're doing, then they've just kind of put her in a box and not let her step out of it, and that's just making her feel a little closed in, a little claustrophobic.
Yeah. Well, this is also why we liked it so much when she turned into a dragon and jumped out the window to go and sort stuff out.
Absolutely, yeah.
This is why it was great.
Yeah, it was proactive.
Yeah.
So we'll wait and see what they're doing with her, basically. But I think just largely, Lilith is proving to be a much less effective villain than Valentine, which is nothing to do with Anna Hopkins.
Yeah.
At all.
No, I think Lilith is kind of so much more terrifying in theory. In the grander scheme of things and what she's planning and what she could be doing and the power that she, as far as we know and have been told, wields. She is terrifying, but it's almost kind of beyond comprehension.
Yes. I think there's also the slight weirdness, which is that a lot of her threat is coming from the fact that she's going to bring Jonathan back. So a lot of the threat she's carrying is actually the threat of Jonathan.
Yeah.
Which sort of implies that narratively Jonathan's scarier than she is.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
I'm not quite sure how that's supposed to materialise itself to us, you know, because Jonathan was scary, but Jonathan was also defeated. You know, they killed him, and they didn't need a sort of grand magical scheme to kill him. They just needed Jace to beat him in a fight with the support of Isabel.
Yeah,
you
totally.
know, if Alec and Jace had gone after Jonathan together,
they probably would have been alright.
They would have beat him and it would have been over. You know, and like, that's not to say that Jonathan wasn't a formidable opponent, but just there is a limit to the threat that one guy with a sword can present to you, even if the emotional threat that he presented was far, far greater than that. Obviously, he caused way more distress than just the damage he could inflict with a sword, kind of thing.
Because I think there might also be something to why I'm not quite feeling Lilith and the threat she poses by the strange combination we've got of her absolute desire to get Jonathan back, and that's all she wants. And there's something kind of glorious about a villain that just wants one thing and will just plough everything down to get it.
Yep.
But then you've also got all of this revenge thing where she's doing these things to Jace and making him do horrible things and playing mind games.
Yes.
So I think it's that combination as well. It kind of feels like I don't know what she's going to do when she gets Jonathan back. Going to go back to Eden, live happily ever after? Except you're not, because you've got this revenge plot.
Yes. There's kind of things about Jace's plot arc this season which we kind of need to just wait until the roundup to discuss, I think, because I don't want to kind of get into it before we've got a full picture of how it's going to go down.
And we've only got 1 week left.
And we've only got 1 week left. But yes, I kind of agree that that's difficult, though obviously her revenge plot against Jace is explicitly about Jonathan.
Yes,
Like,
but not about getting Jonathan back.
No, but I don't have a notional issue with her wanting to get Jonathan back more than anything else in the world and punish the person who killed him at the same time. Like, that feels like a narrative consistency.
Yeah, I just don't feel they're melding it nicely.
No, I think it's fair. And there's kind of issues with the way in which the Jace plot has materialised itself, I think, more than anything else. It's like there's just things about it that have just not quite worked, I guess. And as I say, I want to wait until we've got the sort of full picture of how that goes to talk about it, really. But I think that plays into it too.
But yeah, Lilith kind of weirdly impotent in her golden cage at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely.
And now we got over to the owl, also in his cage.
But isn't that interesting that the owl is literally in a cage in this episode? He is literally chained down and he is so much more threatening than Lilith is.
Yeah, which obviously makes sense because you've got that connection, you've got that knowledge of the people, you've got that face-to-face confrontation.
Yeah.
Which is kind of, I suppose, literally what we just said about being the problem with Lilith, is that she's just in her apartment by herself, now with her Ollie friend.
Yeah, yeah.
But yes, we're at Magnus's where Owl Jace is indeed in a cage. Jace in a cage.
Jace in a cage.
Soap on a rope. He's taunting Izzy, and then he's taunting Alec, and then he's taunting Magnus. And we've got some interesting reactions. Because when he's taunting Alec with the parapetite stuff, Alec just doesn't go for it.
No.
It's like, I love how unbothered all three of them are.
Yes. The only real reactions we get are from Magnus and Alec when attention is turned to the other of them, as it were. Like, they come to each other's defence a couple of times. That yes, they're all distinctly unbothered. One of the nice things about the way this scene plays into the rest of the episode is the owl is underestimating how well Jace and Alec and Isabel know each other and how much they mean to each other. And that's kind of what the rest of this episode's about. I think there's a kind of beautiful distillation of that idea in this scene, by which Alec's not bothered by this because he knows perfectly well what the parapetite bond means to Jace, really.
Yeah, and that's not Jace in a cage.
It's really simple. Yeah, no, really, really lovely.
And I quite like that Magnus comes in and goes, you know, don't let him bother you. He's just saying it to rile you up. And Alec's like, yeah, no, that's why I'm not letting it bother me.
Yeah.
And of course then Jace turns to Magnus in regards to the soldier boy comment. And you get Magnus kind of doing that side eye glancing at Alec in a kind of...
I think it's a check as to whether there's a response, as to whether it's landed.
Yeah, it's like, are we still cool? Are we still okay? Not letting this bother us.
Yeah.
But it's nothing more than that. And then you get this really interesting reaction from Alec. It's that narrowing of the eyes he does. It looks to me like he's assessing how intelligent the owl is, how much knowledge he's got, and what kind of access to information he has. It's just this comment makes him narrow his eyes in a kind of, okay, you know that. What else could this mean that you know?
Yep.
Which could be completely superimposing, but that's what I'm reading in it.
Yes, I think that's a fair read.
And then Luke and Simon enter, and Simon attacks Jace and the box.
Yeah, I mean, get a grip, Simon.
That's what Luke says.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, totally get a grip, Simon. But I think with everyone else being so cool, you needed someone to have this moment of attacking Jace for what Jace is doing, so someone else could say it's not Jace.
Maybe.
Just so we could make this completely clear.
Maybe.
You do remember the bit where they think we're stupid, right?
Yeah.
Just thought I'd remind you of that.
Yeah, okay.
And Dom's manic smile when Simon is dragged away is just glorious.
Okay, so I'm going to say this up top. Dom's awesome in this
so
episode.
good.
He's doing such an interesting range of things.
Yeah.
It is a really challenging episode for him, and he does really, really well with it.
Spoilers. We're in the study and Magnus and Alec and Izzy follow after. Magnus closes the door. So clearly I was wrong last week. Clearly we're not worried about keeping an eye on Jace at all times.
No, we're not.
Clearly we're just leaving Jace in the cage, which may run out of battery anytime soon.
Yeah.
I think they should be more worried, but they're not. Luke is going to go and try and find out what's going on with Clary. Simon is going to go look for clues in Talto. Alec tells them both to ensure that they don't tell anyone about Jace's possession.
Yeah.
And Magnus takes Alec outside to talk to him about Jace.
Yes, this is a really sort of ultimately utilitarian scene. You need all of the people away from the owl to sort of go, okay, I'm going here and you're going there and we're doing this and you're doing that. Boom, 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 off we go.
And I totally agree, you shouldn't discuss that in front of him.
No, totally.
That's totally true.
This is exactly the same scene as the scene we got in the courtyard of the Institute last week.
Yes.
You know, it is, you go here and I'm going there and you do this and I'll do that. And
isn't it delightful to have, like, most of our core cast working together
I was
on
so
the same
excited
problem?
just seeing them in the same room. It's like,
Yeah.
oh my God, look, it's all of you. It's really exciting. There were a couple of little bits, though, that I wanted to pick out as interesting to me. The first of which is this Isabel Simon exchange we get in the middle there. This is the first moment I can possibly have imagined shipping Simon and Izzy.
Yeah.
It's the first moment I'm sort of like, oh, okay, that's an interesting new twist on this relationship.
Yeah, they're really working that scene.
Right. It's interesting that she's the one who gets through to Simon in that moment. You know, obviously what she says is kind of pretty much what anybody would say. There's nothing particularly innovative in what she says, but I like how much and how easily she's able to bring him back to task.
Yeah.
Especially in light of some of the other stuff Simon's going through in this episode, which I'll talk about later. But I was interested by that kind of chiming with me for the first time in any real way.
And it being nice and subtle.
Yes. Yeah, no, not in any way that kind of, oh, he must now leave Maia immediately, but just a little spark. There's a little, you know.
Yeah, I think the thing that I like best about it is that if we didn't know about Simon and Izzy, you wouldn't stop and notice this, because it is just, they're actually becoming friends.
Yeah.
They actually have chemistry.
Right. We've had their relationship before. You know, we've had the sequence with Isabel in the AA meetings and their Rosa adventure, which we won't say any more about. Also their exchange in the Hunter's Moon back in 306. We have had all of these exchanges, but I think one of the things is that Isabel and Simon's relationship has completely been removed from everybody else. Nobody else has had any kind of idea that they even spoke. I don't think, you know, it's kind of obviously they all know Simon, so it's not like a surprise. Oh my God, Isabel's speaking to him. But it feels like this is the first time that those exchanges they've had have been brought into the rest of the episode, the rest of the picture.
Yeah, that makes sense, yeah.
Which I just found quite interesting because, you know, it was significant for us the first few times that Magnus and Alec interacted with any weight in front of other people.
Yeah, with people around them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It means that relationship is no longer just kind of something that is only happening to them. It's something that's kind of been worked into the rest of the tapestry of the narrative.
Which kind of goes right back to our excitement about having all these people in a room together.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I've got some more to say about Simon's kind of role in that I'll cycle back to later. The only other thing that I thought was interesting or notable in this scene was the look between Alec and Isabel after Magnus asks Alec to step outside. Alec and Isabel are stunningly, beautifully brilliant in this episode together.
Yeah.
The Lightwood sibling feels in this episode are unreal. It is so intense and I am so in love with them. It's unreal. But the eye contact between them is interesting. And I don't have particularly an interpretation of it. I just thought it was interestingly noted with the camera work.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the camera highlights Alec pausing to look at Isabel and then, of course, also stays on Isabel for a really long time before we got out to the balcony.
Which I suspect is just about kind of reinforcing their connection before Mindscape activities later. But was interesting and beautifully concise example of their kind of connection, that they're very rarely in the same room and not very much in pace with one another.
Yeah. Though I did have a moment when the camera lingered on Isabel, thinking the next scene was going to be her on her own with the owl. Just because there is that long moment on her. Where it's like, now they've left and it's just you. And there's, you know, evil possessed dude next door.
Yes, though interesting thinking that Alec and Magnus have to have walked past the owl in order to go out to the balcony.
For some more jipes and frolics. So yeah, we then cut straight to the balcony where Magnus says that if they want to bring Jace back, they're going to need the strongest connection they have, which of course is Alec. Alec says yes.
Yeah.
Surprise, surprise.
Shocker. Then Magnus says, I don't think you understand. It's like, I don't think he cares.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, we've done this before. Like, Magnus says, I don't think you understand, as if there's anything he could say that would mean Alec went, oh, that is something we're going to have to consider before I, agree to do this.
It's like, well, in that case, I think we shouldn't. Yeah, never going to happen.
No.
Magnus does point out that Lilith could get his claws into Alec's soul as well, which obviously isn't going to make any difference to Alec, but does work quite nicely with the scene later back in the study with Isabel saying that last time we tried to find him, you then got lost also, and that was a bad plan.
Yes.
So I think it kind of works for that. And I don't think this is Magnus reverse psychologing Alec.
No, I don't think so.
That's not what he's thinking. But it kind of works for us to go, there is a risk you might get stuck. Like, you did last time.
Yeah.
You remember that? This is why we're giving you an anchor this time.
Yeah.
But yes, there is literally nothing Magnus could say here that would make Alec go, shan't then.
Short of, if you do this, Isabel and I will keel over dead immediately.
And Jace will implode.
Right.
Yeah.
Just like, short of this actually not being helpful to Jace and putting Alec's other loved ones at risk.
In which case, why are you suggesting it, Magnus?
Why are you suggesting
What an idiot.
Yeah, right.
Magnus pauses and says, but if I help you do this, and then I lose you. And Alec clasps his hands and says, I know.
Yep. I mean, there's not too much to say about that, really. Just jeepers, what a thing to have to do.
Yeah. And nice that he's verbalising it, I suppose.
Yeah, totally. Especially given Magnus's feelings of responsibility that we've been
guilt,
dealing with.
Totally. Because I think there is absolutely an element of, I don't want to lose you.
Yes.
But I think there's another element of, I don't want to be responsible for yet another horrific thing that's going on here.
Well, I really don't want to be responsible
for losing you. Yeah, no, absolutely. And Alex says that if he doesn't get Jace back, without him, he's nothing. And the stutter is back. And we all know that Matthew Daddario stutters beautifully.
Yep.
Which is not something I've ever said about a person, I don't think. And Magnus says, then we'll do this, but not alone.
Yes.
Do you want to talk about the Parabatai versus Malik thing?
I mean, no. I kind of want to talk about Alec. I kind of want to talk about Alec and self-worth. Because I don't think this whole I'm nothing without him is anything to do with Jace or Magnus. I think this is to do with Alec. I think this is to do with Alec and Alec's perception of himself and the way Alec internalises his relationships. I was thinking today about whether there was a correlation between Alec's relationship with Jace and Alec's feelings of his own self-worth. Because the thing that tripped me up a little on first watching of this scene was that I kind of felt that maybe Alec wasn't quite in this place anymore.
Yep.
That this is totally an echo of the sort of things he was saying back in 201, 202. That his Parabatai was the best of him, basically. That he needed Jace because he wasn't himself without him. That he needed him because otherwise he wasn't worth anything by himself. This is absolutely an echo of that. I quite like the bridges we're drawing between the 2 points in time.
Yeah.
The last time Alec lost Jace, this is what happened, and this is how he was, and this is how he responded, and here's the ways he's responding similarly, and here's the way he's responding differently.
Same as all the throwback connections we've had between what's going on with Magnus and Alec in season 3 to the beginning of season 2. Yeah,
totally. So I am sort of appreciative of the bridge drawing, but I did kind of trip over it slightly because I thought that maybe Alec shouldn't be feeling the same way anymore, which got me thinking about the way in which which Jace and Alec's relationship has always had a hugely profound effect on Alec himself, and whether there's a correlation there, whether the fact that Jace is gone means that he's backstepped in his own self-development.
Because that Jace being gone kind of means there's a bigger piece of Alec missing.
Because I was remembering the conversation we were having around 203, 204, which is that's the point in Alec's life where things suddenly start getting better.
Yep.
203, 204, 205, and then 206, he gets together with Magnus properly. That was the period in his life where things started to improve, and we were talking about it in context of the Jocelyn incident and how much that threw him for a loop, because things were improving. Things were falling into place again. Jace was back. He and Jace were together again in a way that they hadn't been since 101, kind of, you know, since Clary got in between them and things got complicated. But I was thinking that actually last episode was the first time Alec had lost Jace since he found Jace again in 203, and things fell into place for Alec again.
So kind of throwback to pre-Parapatai
I was
lost.
wondering whether actually Alec hasn't had to think about this in terms of his own self-worth and his own self-worth in regards to Jace as a reflection of himself since 203. He hasn't needed to be there anymore. He hasn't needed to think about it because Jace has been there. We've talked about the ways in which Jace and Alec have actually been pretty tight.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, since then. So I think that's maybe something that's worth ruminating on a little bit.
How much of it do you think is also down to the fact that things are going okay for Alec at the moment, or certainly were at the beginning? You know, he's head of the Institute, he got that job offer by the Clave. That means he's doing good work-wise. His relationship with Magnus was in a good place, and then everything started to fall apart.
Yep.
And Jace wasn't opening up to him, and he withdrew from that. And then that went topsy-turvy, that being Magnus into his relationship.
Yep.
How much do you think this is him thinking things are okay and now suddenly everything falling to pieces and therefore so drastically reverting to pre his confidence growing, because actually his growing confidence was all kind of castles built on clouds?
Yeah, I think that's entirely possible. We have to remember, I guess, at this point that Alec's self-worth has been so tied up in Jace for so long.
Yeah.
He defined himself by Jace. He existed in season 1 to be a support to Jace and, to a degree, Isabel too. That's what he was for. That's how he defined himself. That's how he structured his life. That was his self-worth. Jace was his self-worth. He was doing okay as long as he was Jace's parabatai and he was doing right by him.
Yep.
And that was working. Things started to fall apart for Alec when that stopped being the way he could define himself, because Jace rejected that part of him in a lot of ways. Alec was forced to reevaluate his own self-worth because Jace had rejected the idea that that's all they were.
And all of his redefining and searching for a separate identity kind of went okay, except then he didn't.
Yeah, and however well he managed to create a new or enhanced or more well-developed identity for himself, it's really, really recent. So the fact that Jace has disappeared again must make it feel like it was a facade he was wearing all along.
Yeah. And I do think ultimately we are just putting 10 years of being raised by Maryse Lightwood, being held up to standards that basically you were never going to meet because that's how to make you stronger.
Yep.
And then 10 years of him defining himself as part of the Parapatai bond. And we're putting those 20 years versus 2 months.
Yeah, exactly.
We just can't forget that.
No.
It's like, yeah, he has come on leaps and bounds. And that kind of makes it worse. I think the drastic improvement we've seen over the 2 months makes that crashing more likely.
Yes, because if anything's going to make you feel like you've been pretending, is that something's happened very quickly.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, all that's about Alec. Do we need to talk about the fact that Magnus doesn't disagree with him at all?
In regards to him being nothing?
Yeah.
And maybe it's kind of really not what Alec needs and wants to hear right now. I think the situation where time is of the essence and Alec wants to get his parabatai back kind of isn't the moment for life coaching in regards to his self-worth.
Right, but there's life coaching and then there's saying, well, you're not nothing to me. I mean, I think, okay, let's do this thing.
Yeah, because I think literally what he would be is, no, that's not true.
Yeah.
And Alec going, yeah.
Yeah.
And then they do the same thing, which, yeah, you kind of wouldn't lose any time over, so you might as well do it because you're a good supportive boyfriend.
Yeah. I had a kind of thought that was about Magnus and Alec and sort of self-care and care of each other, which sort of goes back to what we were talking about at the beginning about comfort or lack thereof.
Yeah.
Both Magnus and Alec express textual lack of self-worth in this episode.
Yep.
And I'm wondering how much they're both so much in their own heads that actually Magnus is not disagreeing with Alec because it's so much how he himself feels that it kind of sounds true even if it's not. Not about Alec, just about people, just about the world. But I'm wondering whether there's something in there about the fact that they're kind of neither of them able to exhibit enough self-care to care for each other. You need to be in a place of self-worth in order to think that you have the ability to comfort someone else.
Well, it's that kind of classic thing that, mothers say to you, isn't it?
Yeah.
No one's going to love you unless you love yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see them both being stuck in this bubble of just not having enough space and awareness of the other one to take care of them.
Because that's the only thing that I could think of that sort of would be a rationale for Magnus not saying anything. Because, yes, I totally agree. Alec wouldn't hear it. Alec wouldn't internalise it. But kind of it would have been nice if Magnus had said something. It's a little bit difficult to have Alec go, I'm nothing without him, and for Magnus to not exhibit any disagreement with that sentiment whatsoever. Kind of irregardless of how Alec would feel about it.
Yeah. Because we get that resigned breath. But that's about steeling himself to go and do the thing.
Right.
That's not in reaction to what Alec's saying, I don't think.
No, well, I think it's in acceptance of what Alec wants to do.
Yeah, this is happening, so we're going to do it.
It's acceptance of Alec's decision, but that's not anything to do with Alec's sort of expression of self-worthlessness.
Because I kind of went back to listen to it again to see what it was, a massive sigh. Oh my God, you still feel that way about yourself.
Yeah.
And it's not.
No.
It's a deep breath. We're going to do this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I think we're going to have to come back to this right at the end of this episode as well, because there's that moment between the two of them that I think will pick up against this one.
Yes, I think so.
So I want to talk about it right at the end.
Sure.
So we then got over to the aforementioned study scene in which we learn that Isabel can go with Alec, and after some grumbling, Alec really doesn't have anything to counter Izzy's arguments, and therefore she's going.
Isabel's awesome in this episode.
Yeah.
I really love Isabel in this episode.
She is so good.
Yep.
She also has this really nice moment right at the end after Alec kind of gives in and she does the slightly excited, let's go and do this thing.
Oh, the dare.
Yeah. It's so good.
Beautiful.
This is right back to the thing that really bugged us about Isabel in 103 or whatever it was. When we went out to go and kill the demons and she had that awful, it's better to break the law than to follow the law. It's that same sentiment, except this is awesome. This is that kind of slight daredevil.
Yes. See, I don't think this is anything about Isabel being a daredevil. I think this is her daring Magnus. Magnus says, it'll take way more magic and I'll only have one shot to pull the three of you out altogether. And she looks at him, not at Alec, and says, so let's go do this.
Yeah, okay. External daredevil rather than internal daredevil.
I think she's daring Magnus. I don't think she's daring herself. I think it's very deliberately externalised.
Yeah, fair enough.
I think she knows that Alec is going to be 100% recklessly committed to this idea, and that is going to make Magnus more hesitant, not less.
Yeah.
She's going to do it because she's not letting Alec do this thing by himself, whoever it is, let alone as part of a rescue mission for Jace.
And therefore they have to make Magnus do the thing.
Right.
Yeah.
We've had before moments of Magnus and Isabel maybe being a little similar. That maybe one of the ways in which Alec and Magnus chime is because Magnus is not entirely dissimilar from Isabel.
Yeah.
That there's that kind of resonance in their relationship.
Well, I wanted them to become the best of friends and go shopping all the time. Also in season 4.
I think she dares him, maybe because if he dared her, she'd respond to that. I think there's a kind of well played. I think it's a little bit of that manipulative Isabel that we've had in times past.
That we liked so much in season 2.
Right.
And 1.
So, yeah, no, I loved this. I love that it felt like she was daring him.
And I just really like that almost slight laughter on her voice, which I do think is all about just this kind of, this is terrifying, this is a massive thing, this could go horribly wrong. You can't stop to think about it.
Yeah.
You have to just go and do it.
Yeah.
And you have to do it with a bright smile and the skip in your step, because otherwise you're never going to leave that room.
Yep.
It just, yeah, she's lovely. We then cut to Idris, where Clary's trial starts under the Soul Sword. We establish the Soul Sword works.
Yeah.
The end.
Pretty much.
Yep.
Okay, so here's the question.
Okay, not the end.
How'd they get the Soul Sword back?
I forgot about that because I think we saw it in a promo and we had this conversation and I thought we kind of dealt with it, but we haven't actually dealt with it on air, have we?
Nope.
Yeah, they dredged the lake.
Apparently so.
But didn't get the cup back.
Nope.
Nah. I don't know.
I mean, that's all. There's no answer, but that's a magically reappearing soul sword.
Asio soul sword?
Yeah, maybe.
As good as any answer.
Yeah, maybe.
And luckily, Clary only broke some of it.
Yeah.
Also for plot convenience.
Yeah. We maybe should mention, however, that Jaya Penhallow is played by Françoise Yip.
Yes, seeing as she didn't just turn up once.
No.
She's back.
She is back.
We then cut to Skyscraper Talto, where Lilith is sending off some of her disciples to look for her lost owl.
Hang on a minute. She's not sending off some of her disciples. She's sending off all of her disciples except Ollie.
I thought it was just like 6 of them.
Maybe it's only 6, but it's the only 6 we have in the building. Like,
That is true.
just in terms of Ollie being singled out as,
Talkie disciple.
a very special talkie disciple. Disgruntled cat face.
And Ollie cares so much more about Lilith than any of the other ones.
Yes.
And it makes no sense.
No.
There's almost a bit of me that is wondering whether the reason that this is happening is because they're going somewhere with Ollie being closer to being able to break out of this disciple thing.
Maybe.
Because there must be a reason why she's so good and shiny. And, humanoid.
Yeah, no, if she actually turned out to be, actually a special disciple, I'd have very little issue.
She could just be very special and depossess herself.
Yes, she could be. And also, there would be a sort of vaguely justifiable explanation for it. Like, she knows about the shadow world, she has the sight, there's a kind of an awareness.
Closer to the whole thing that's going on. Nice.
An awareness of the mystical, an awareness of demons, an awareness of something not being quite right and therefore her being more herself. I don't know.
I mean, it's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen, but I could make something work with that. If they gave me anything to go on, I could sort of make it work. But they're not. They're just not paying anybody else to have lines.
Yep.
This would work so much better also if we hadn't had the 1 or 2 scenes with the other disciples being like blank slates when they were standing
Totally.
to the side, just...
Yeah. Poor supporting artist who had to hand over Clary's jacket.
Yeah.
And then stare vacantly into space.
Yep.
And then take the jacket back.
Yep.
Yeah. No, it's just messy.
Yep.
Yep. And then Lilith goes off to see the Seelie Queen.
Yes,
to
she does.
talk about daylighting.
So, that was just something that I thought we should underline because I thought that was interesting. She says, my troubles first began in the Seelie Court. Mm-hmm. We have no frame of reference as to which troubles.
I'm assuming the Seelie Court is Eden.
Quite possibly, yes, but
we should totally possibly mention this actually textually and talk about it. But yes, I'm assuming that must mean that the Seelie Court started off in the Garden of Eden.
I think that's entirely possible, even likely, especially given what the Seelie Queen says about making Eve, giving her Seelie beauty.
Yeah, I mean, it's all kind of confusing in regards to, the whole Bible thing.
Right.
But...
Yes, and I'm assuming that ultimately this is part of Lilith's backstory that we may come back round to later, so
maybe
we don't have to worry about it. But she kind of said where all my troubles began in the Seelie Court. And I sort of went, oh, right, that's where your troubles began?
Because also possibly she realised she had troubles with Adam.
Possibly.
And seek the Seelie's help.
Possibly. And I have very little else to say about it. I just wanted to kind of underline that as being interesting, worthy of note, and possibly will feed into a discussion that we may have in several episodes' time. Possibly. Who knows?
And that may include salt.
Possibly. Yeah. Just facts that we're going to have to put pins in for later.
Yes. We cut over to Simon, who is also putting a pin in it. In this whole search for the Queen of Evil.
Yeah, for somebody who was as het up about the whole saving Clary and business and action
I'm just going to stand around while Clary rots in prison. I'm going to sit down and have a pint with my girlfriend.
Yeah.
It's very odd.
Yeah.
Especially because we cut over to this scene and we get the kind of dance music in the background, which is pretty much the same music we got when we cut over to the Hunter's Moon for Magnus and Alec playing pool. Mm-hmm. It's weird. Where Simon is worried about having to hunt down the Queen of Hell, however instantly turns down Maia's help to hunt down the Queen of Hell.
Yep.
And then she's coming anyway.
Yep.
And the other thing we learn in this scene is that Bat's being trained to be a bartender.
Yes, he is. Which is, it may be sort of doubly interesting given the end of this episode in regards to Maia packing up her little bag and heading for the hills.
Maybe Kevin Alvers actually gets to be a slightly more real boy.
That would be nice. I also want to just highlight in this scene that Simon's working relatively hard to keep Maia out of it.
Yeah.
I just think that's, again, something that will come into the discussion I want to have about Simon later on. But
yes, and into the conversation about Maia leaving.
Yes.
We are keeping our audience on tenterhooks this episode.
It's like, none of this is very cryptic. I'm sure you've all worked out where the discussion is going before we've actually got there. But...
Mostly they're just being really messy about this discussion.
Yeah.
Which is weird, because we're doing it scene by scene. Except we're failing at doing it scene by scene. The thing I really like about this scene is that Simon tries to talk to Maia about Jordan, and that he's saying, I know you said you're fine, and you probably are. I know you want time, and he knows that we'll talk about it later. It is so, so gentle. Mm-hmm. And she shoots him down, quite rightly so, in this moment, because there are bigger fish to fry.
Yeah.
But I just really, really love Simon in this.
Yeah.
And then Jordan enters, because he's the king of good timing. And we get a little bit of conflict with Simon trying to kick him out and Maia explaining that he's here because she said he needs to be here, and him saying he really wants to help.
Yes.
And after a bit of to and fro, Jordan's coming with them.
I have a bit of a question as to how I feel about Maia making this decision that Jordan's going to stay and help Simon. For Simon.
Yeah.
That's not entirely
her call.
Comfy.
Yeah. It kind of works better in this episode, where we get Maia's emotions coming out.
Sure.
Whereas I think it was slightly more problematic last episode, the fact that she's decided that he's not going to abandon another person, and therefore he's going to stay. Because we did talk about the Praetor Loop as being a military organisation.
Yes.
And an actual governing body.
Yeah.
They would reassign someone else. It's not like Kai leaves and that's it.
Sure, totally. But the reason I have an issue with it in this episode, and a way I didn't have a particular issue with it in the last episode, is because Maia was removing Jordan's choice. Last episode. She was saying, you are not bailing on him.
Yeah.
You are going to stay here and be here for him. What she wasn't saying was, Simon, you have to let him be here for you.
Yeah.
What she's doing now is trying to pressure Simon into staying in this relationship. If she'd said to Jordan, no, you have to stick around because if he needs you, you are going to be there for him. You're not going to walk out on him again. If this relationship is going to end, it has to come from Simon. For then Simon to go, no, I don't want you anywhere near me.
Yeah, no, absolutely, which would be totally
fine
fair.
and completely justified. Like,
but there's also the issue, of course, we have no idea where Simon's living at the moment.
It's difficult because we have absolutely no idea how long it's been since he walked out of his apartment. He was sleeping in his van when Jace found him busking, so I kind of assumed that...
Right, he's sleeping in his van again.
He was sleeping in his van.
Because, of course, we ended last episode with Simon and Luke at the Church of Talto. We opened this episode with Simon and Luke at the Church of Talto.
Yes.
There clearly hasn't been a night.
No.
But there is a slight weirdness about the bit where Maia's told Jordan that he needs to stay, and then clearly not talk to Simon about this. In a kind of, you're sleeping in your van, I've told Jordan to stay, it's okay with me. You could move back into your flat where all your stuff lives.
Yeah, I mean, especially she hasn't seen Simon since, really.
Yeah.
Because they had that brief exchange at the end of last episode.
But they did get through a whole pint before they talked about the Queen of Hell.
Yes.
They could have totally had this conversation now, they didn't.
Yeah, they totally could have. Anyway, I don't have an issue with Maia pressuring Jordan into staying. I have an issue with her pressuring Simon into maintaining this relationship with him.
Yeah. It all comes from the bit where Maia decides that all of what Simon's doing is to protect her.
Yes.
Which is understandable, but a little bit self-involved.
I think it's sort of 80% true.
Yeah, no, I would agree.
But
it is completely not thinking about the fact that maybe Simon also feels betrayed.
Yeah.
And maybe he has a right to do so.
Yeah. And maybe also he no longer trusts this dude who he only knows treated his girlfriend really badly and then lied to him repeatedly about everything. Yeah, it's just kind of this wouldn't be the person that I would want watching my back.
Because, they got on.
Yeah.
We talked about wondering how much Carl was going to change once he wasn't playing at being Simon's perfect match anymore.
Yeah.
And he didn't. He didn't drastically change.
No.
So they clearly do get on.
Yeah.
It wasn't just a facade. But it does all seem a little bit kind of, self-involved. I'm going to stick with self-involved.
That's fair.
I like Maia, but she's not doing great. We got to the Jade Wolf, where we learned that no one in Idris wants to talk to Luke. Maryse comes in, Luke tells her absolutely nothing, and she still offers to help anyway. And the way she can help is by contacting Robert's affair, who's not Underhill, and also a woman. So woe on all of those theories.
Indeed.
They all went out the window.
So, mostly, the Luke strand of this episode is the one that works least well for me.
It's really messy and kind of so drastically removed from the plot. It's really weird because, of course, they're all off to do different things. And we just had this meeting in Magnus' study telling us they were all going to be off to do different things.
Yep.
But this just seems like he's literally off in his own world doing his own thing. That makes no sense.
Yeah. And I get that we needed somebody to worry about Clary. I may be preempting the sort of roundup conversation a little bit, but I really love that Clary's held very separately from the others in this episode. It really works very well. And because they're in no position to be worrying about Clary, somebody does need to worry about Clary, and it makes sense for it to be Luke. That's absolutely the case. But I'm enjoying how isolated Clary is narratively in this episode, and how separate she is from everything else going on, and kind of Luke keeps like almost bothering me with what's happening to Clary, because I know what's happening to Clary. She's being her fiercely self-involved, independent self back in Idris. She is handling herself.
She is an awesome firecracker in a trial.
Yes.
Stop getting yourself involved.
Right. Yeah. And it's kind of, every time we go back to Luke fretting about it, it's like it's drawing me away from Clary's individualness, her isolation, which I'm really enjoying, so that's a bit difficult. However, there's some really lovely stuff in this scene about Luke and Maryse being parents.
Yep.
I love how concerned Maryse is for Clary on Jace's behalf.
Yeah.
You don't get much of a sense that she really cares very much about Clary, that she knows Clary very well to be caring about her individually.
But Jace must be distraught.
Yeah. Jace must be beside himself.
Yeah.
And that's obviously something that she's hugely worried about. Like, she doesn't need to know Clary. It doesn't matter to her.
Oh, yeah. No, absolutely.
You know, just like she didn't need to know Charlie. She's being very, very single-track minded on these things at the moment, and it's beautiful in the way that we're continuing that mirroring between Maryse and Lilith in terms of motherhood.
Yeah. Which actually, sorry, you just said that, and it suddenly makes perfect sense that she says, I've been calling Jace all day, and doesn't mention Alec and Izzy. Because obviously neither of them would pick up their phone either. But it struck me as really weird that she didn't say, I've been calling all my children all day, and I'm freaking out. That it was just Jace. But yes, of course, it really works with that mirroring.
Yep.
Thanks.
That's all right. I mean, you also have to assume that Alec and Isabel have called her more recently than Jace has.
Yes, because he's been owly.
But all of that is really, really beautiful. I adore that Maryse's contact in Idris is this woman Robert had an affair with.
Yeah. And I really like that she says, you know, she's actually a decent woman.
Yeah.
Because she's over it.
Yeah, it's just so, so wonderful.
It's also a really nice way, whether Luke deserves her right now or not, it's a really nice way to kind of really subtly establish that he would be okay if they went somewhere.
Yeah, totally. We've cleared the air on that.
Totally.
I think it's a clean slate for both of them very clearly. And it's interesting that Luke mentions Jocelyn in this conversation as well, suggesting that maybe the air isn't quite as clear for him. But because his care for Jocelyn is kind of bundled in with Clary, it makes more sense in that regard that it's kind of bundled in with his parenthood.
Bundled in with Clary, his parenthood and his guilt. And the police aspect that we've always liked about Luke. I'm not losing another one.
Yeah, just loving all of the parent things we're getting in this scene and all of the mother things we're getting in this season. It's just so gorgeous, and we'll have a conversation about that at the end of the season, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But just really, really beautiful.
And I love that we've got Maryse Lightwood in yet another dodgy establishment where she looks so out of place.
Absolutely. I was thinking back on it, actually, because with the exception of Magnus's Loft, which we saw her in 208 looking out of place, looking uncomfortable, and then saw her in this season, and it was a completely different... But apart from that, we've literally only seen Maryse in the Institute.
Yes, and that one time in front of the Institute for a second.
Yeah.
That's it.
It's just really interesting. I don't think there's any other character that has been quite so static. Like, it was so weird seeing her in The Hunter's Moon a couple of episodes ago. It's really weird seeing her in The Jade Wolf now. She doesn't fit yet.
And so think all the wolves.
Yes.
Because I think Luke's line's really interesting about how, you know, you're welcome here if the clave kicks you to the curb. And you sit there and go, no, she's not. They're not happy. You know, they're not going to attack her, but they're not happy. And it's just, because she's been de-ruined for 3.5 days.
Yeah.
And she's still Maryse Lightwood.
Yes.
And that's not going to get forgotten that easily. We cut to Magnus's loft, where Magnus starts the spell, and Jace uses the box against him somehow. I'm not entirely clear on this. It looks like he's electrocuting himself to stop the connection that's going on.
I think he electrocutes himself to the point of unconsciousness.
Yeah, but surely it'd be easy to get into his head if he was unconscious.
I mean, apparently not. He can't get into Jace's mind because Jace's mind is unconscious, which kind of makes a certain amount of sense.
I suppose so. What I really do like is that it's the first time where the owl talks about Jace in third person. person.
Yeah.
And it's in relation to saying you guys were always the smart ones. It's bringing it down to that intelligence and that clearly this ruse isn't working, so you have to find a different way of going about it.
Yeah, I mean, really interesting that the owl started talking about Jace in third person. I'm not sure that he says they're too intelligent for it, the owl. I think he means that they're too intelligent for Jace. I think he's digging at Jace. I think one of the interesting things that he's sort of doing through the digs is making Jace sound not very nice. Turning them against Jace, not just against the owl.
That possibly taunting them wasn't working, so taunting them by discrediting Jace.
Yeah.
Is kind of what you're getting at.
Yeah. The Jace that they're heading into Jace's mind to find isn't really worth saving.
Yeah.
You know, that there's a kind of implication. It's like, you were always the smartest in the family.
So surely
Jace.
cut your losses.
Yeah.
I just think it's really interesting that he's changing tactics so drastically.
Yeah, totally. I love how fed up Magnus looks. That kind of, oh, for God's sake, let's get on with it.
Yeah.
That thing he does with his face. It's like, yeah, whatever.
Which I think is exactly the same thing that we get when Jace then tries to taunt him again.
Yeah.
Over who do you think is going to choose? And Magnus's,
Yeah.
it's literally an eye roll and like, of course you're going to go there.
Yeah.
Schoolyard games.
Yeah, absolutely.
It is so fed up and dismissive. It is brilliant. And it's kind of amazing that despite Magnus not engaging and Magnus being fed up and Alec and Izzy not engaging, how striking it is to have Jace say, "You're precious Alexander." It's such a slap in the face.
Yeah, the fact that he says Alexander, like...
How dare you?
My God! It feels like he's got pictures of them naked. You know what I mean? It's it's that kind of complete invasion of intimacy. I mean, of course they've heard Magnus call Alec Alexander.
Oh, absolutely,
Of course they have. But
there's just no surprise whatsoever.
But there's this kind of, he calls him that thing, which is completely ridiculous because he calls him that a lot. Also, it's his name. It's not like it's,
And the bit where Alec won't let anyone else call him Alexander, that's just a fanfic thing. This is not canon. It's true that no one else does.
Right.
But it's not true that Alec will, scratch their eyes out for doing so.
Yes, we have no information as to Alec's feelings of his full name. There's kind of something about Alec suits Alec.
Yeah.
That blunt, short, straightforwardness of it. In a way that Alexander sounds a little bit romantic and poetic.
Yeah, it's a little bit fluffy, and it really only works when Magnus says it, because he's also a little bit fluffy.
But he's also drawing on Alec's romanticism. Like, that's sort of the point.
No, it is so good. I mean, well done, Jamie Gorenberg.
Yeah, no, totally. And names matter, names mean something. When we call Jace Jonathan, it means something, it's important.
Yeah.
Izzy's kind of the only one who gets to be called Izzy as a genuine nickname.
And of course, we're going to have it in a couple of scenes when Izzy disappears and Alec calls out for Izzy, and then the second time he calls out for Isabel.
Yeah.
And it is, of course, the case that you've got names for certain people that only you call them.
Right.
And that would sound weird if someone else did. It's the same when someone introduces themselves to you with a nickname. I always feel really weird because it's like, I don't know you. I don't know how this nickname came about, and I don't feel that we're close enough for me to use it.
But it's also the difference between a Rob who is technically Robert but is just called Rob.
Totally,
is Rob to everybody, and a Catherine who you sometimes call Kath out of hand, but is mostly Catherine,
No, totally. I mean, I'm not saying I wouldn't call Alec if he introduced himself as Alec.
Right.
I'm saying I wouldn't call Clary Biscuit.
Well, no, obviously.
It's that level of, nickname.
Yeah. I mean, you have a kind of funny one because Michelle's called Michelle. That's her name. But your username, when I and quite a lot of our friends got to know you, was Mishka.
Yes.
And so I call Michelle Mish, which is actually short for Mishka, but there are people who call you Mish because it's short for Michelle. You know what I mean? It's
That's
just
slightly funky,
a weird kind of
internet real life nickname overlap thing. Yeah,
sort of weird wrong way round kind of thing. Anyway, point being that names matter. Names have significance.
Yeah,
and sometimes names denote familiarity and fondness, the things that we call people, and sometimes they denote other things. The people who call Clary Clarissa, that's not denoting intimacy. That's denoting the opposite of that.
And the people, beginning of season 1 who would insist on calling her Fairchild.
Yep, absolutely.
At the time we spoke about the fact that Alec never did. And there is a kind of implication that he cares about names.
Yes.
Which makes this one hit harder.
Yes, totally.
There's a funky 3-season loop kind of a drawback, but yeah.
Yeah, names matter. This line hits hard. And the fact that Alec raises his voice is striking too.
Yes.
You know, this is the only thing the owl has said that has got any kind of a rise out of any of them.
Yeah, totally. And the scene ends with Izzy asking to be portaled to the Institute because she's had a bright idea about something.
Yes, she has.
Yes. We then cut over to Claire's trial, where she's trying really quite hard to keep her secrets, but soul sword.
Yep.
So she tells them everything. And we cut the scene just before Clary tells Gia Penhallow how Jace was possessed.
I love how heartbroken Clary sounds when she says, I think so.
Oh, when he killed Imogen.
Killed Imogen.
Yeah. It kind of does go right back to my problems I had with how exactly does the sword work. Obviously, I can totally see what goes through Clary's mind, and Kat's doing a beautiful job in this scene. But I did think, well, no, Jace didn't. Jace is possessed. It wasn't him. And you know it wasn't him.
If she'd said yes, that would have been not true because she doesn't know that for sure. If she'd said no, that would have been not true because she doesn't know that for sure. I guess she could have said no because Jace isn't the owl. But I guess because she doesn't know what happened,
I suppose so.
She can't say, no, it wasn't him.
Yeah.
She doesn't know what happened. The only thing she can say is, I think so. You know, because she thinks that it's likely. It's possible.
And yeah, it is really, really nice just how distressed she is.
Yeah.
And then we cut over to the most awkward road trip ever.
Oh, yeah.
In which Maia gets called and Jordan offers her his jacket.
Well, Maia hugs herself.
Yes.
Maia doesn't necessarily get cold. Jordan jumps on the fact that she looks like she might be cold.
And also in the past, she has gotten cold before.
She has previously been cold. Yes, okay, fine. Because she's not, like, shivering. She's not, like, obviously definitely cold. It seems sort of extra that he's just kind of jumping on anything he can to ingratiate himself to her.
I mean, he is very extra in this.
Yeah.
And Simon gives us some more vampire facts.
Yes.
About temperature, which is, you know, always nice. And then, if you didn't dislike Jordan before, you'd definitely dislike him when he continues about going down memory lane about how Maia used to get cold in the past.
Yeah.
And how he remembers this.
Do you just sit in the corner and stop talking?
And then Simon gives us some traffic facts.
Yes.
Which is also nice.
Yeah, break the tension with some traffic facts, always good.
But yeah, everything is awkward in this. And even Simon's previous displayed skill of being fun on road trips is not saving this scene.
Nope.
We cut back to Magnus's loft where Jace wakes up in angel chains, which is what Izzy went to fetch.
Good thought.
Yeah. I'm not entirely sure what the chains are attached to, but then again, I also wasn't sure about that when Valentine did it, because I totally get how you can't break out of the cuffs, but I'm not sure how with lots and lots of energy you can't pull them out of the wall / Magnus's carpet. But he's not trying, so the owl is stupid.
Yeah, I mean, I also guess that Magnus, unlike Valentine, can glue pretty much anything to anything else he likes via magic, so...
And now I'm just picturing gluing the owl to stuff. Which is funny. And the owl points out to us that he's no angel. And then before anything much else happens, Magnus restarts the connection, and this time it does work. Now, for science, I spent quite a lot of time this morning looking at shirtless pictures of Jace.
Oh, you poor thing.
Just because we get those 2 shots of the Parapatai rune.
Yeah.
And I realised that I didn't actually have an active awareness of where Jace's Parapatai rune was.
Okay.
Do you?
I sort of knew it was on his abdomen because when Alec tracks him with the Paratai rune back in season 1, he falls on the ground clutching his side. And they're mirrors of each other, so kind of it always made sense that that's where his was too.
Yeah, which is very much what they're doing here.
Yes.
With the glowing in exactly the same place.
Yes.
Now, there's multiple issues with this. His Parapatai rune is in that general area, but it's actually kind of literally above the point of his hip bone on his side.
Okay.
Really not where it's showing here. But the main thing, because we get such a close-up of the Parapatai rune glowing in this scene, they're both upside down, the way Alec's are.
Right, yes.
And Jace's really is not.
Interesting.
Because Alex is in the wrong position as well. Like, it's way too high. It's basically where his agility rune is.
Right, because his Parapatai rune's quite low.
Which is okay, because you need to be able to show it properly and show what it is.
Obviously, if you'd put it where it actually is, it probably would be getting in the way of, like, his belt and
his arms.
And that kind of thing, yeah.
So I totally get that. But they're both upside down the way Alex Parapatai rune is, which Jace's is not in any shot. And they've been really quite consistent, kind of post, season 1 where all the runes were...
Higgledy-piggledy.
Higgledy-piggledy, absolutely. And one of the things that I realised in my research for science, which I had never noticed before, when he and Michael Wayland are boxing in the back of the Great Wolf?
Yes.
And Michael Wayland pulls him up on the fact that he's being slow and useless and rubbish. And he says, it's because of my Parapatai connection.
Yeah.
And he reaches for his rune.
Yeah.
And he's actually got the burn mark of the tracking rune that Hodge painted on Alec.
Oh, nice.
Which I had never picked up before.
No, I I had no idea about that. Very
But
cool.
that was cool in my research.
Yeah.
See how he was for science.
Yeah.
However, it is the right way up in every scene. Because there's also, of course, we get an awful lot of season 3, Jay shirtless on beds. And again, I went through him being attacked by Jonathan and freeze-framed for science. And the runes stay exactly where they're meant to be.
Yeah.
And this is not.
Well, they've been completely consistent, I think, since Alec's parabatai rune went from being not upside down and then invisible and then upside down.
Yeah. Since Alec's parabatai rune went upside down, the runes have clearly been written down somewhere and applied correctly.
Which was at the beginning of season 2, which makes sense. So that's interesting. I mean, I guess you could kind of headcanon it if it bothered you by it being a direct reflection of Alex on purpose.
Well, that's kind of what I mean. It's a CGI department and they're not in the same building and they've been told to do blah.
Yes.
But I do think it's interesting that it's been so consistent with the placement and the look of the runes.
Yes.
And this is so pointedly upside down.
Yes.
Whether it is a kind of reflection of Alex, because they are going through Alex's connection.
I mean, I think you can headcanon it that way if it bothers you, because it's CGI, because it's, you know, post-production. It's sort of after the fact, you know what I mean? It's like, with makeup, there's a whole bunch of people who could catch that it was wrong.
Yeah, yeah, and you've got reference photographs that you're using for makeup every single time.
So you've got an entire makeup department who can check it. You've got the makeup-y, who presumably knows where it is on their body most of the time. You've got the director who can call it up at the time. You've got, you know, any assistant directors or production people on set at the time who can call it up, whereas after the fact you've got somebody in a booth doing the CGI by themselves,
having to put it somewhere where you can actually see it in this scene the way you filmed it, which Jace's would be completely impossible to show this, unless you actually had him strung up with the angel chains by the ceiling, which you could have done, but would be a little bit hardcore. Well spotted, but I'm going to stick with that headcanon.
Fair enough,
because I don't like it when, you know, they mess up.
Fair enough.
The other thing I thought was interesting is that Isabel says that the chains held an angel for 25 years.
Yeah.
Which we, of course, back in the day were wondering, you know, when did Valentine get this angel, how, and what's going on. And it makes the whole thing so much more horrific. But it also kind of implies that this is the angel that he caught to then draw the angel blood to inject fetus Jace with.
Yes.
Obviously makes perfect sense, because, again, he had to get that angel blood from somewhere.
Yes.
But they then kept the angel chained up for 25 years?
Yes.
So I know the dude's dead now, but wow.
I mean, I had to assume that he did, because he had an angel chained up and he'd got angel blood, so it kind of must have been.
I just hadn't really put together the length of time that those two events were obviously apart.
I mean, I was interested by the 25 years. Here's another number. This is encouraging us to do maths. Obviously, 25 years could be her rounding up slightly. Obviously, Valentine could have had the angel captured for some time before he started injecting pregnant women with various substances. But, you know.
Because I assumed that, you know, he had to try for a bit to get an angel. And that basically, you're going to get the angel before you're going to find your pregnant women.
Yes.
Because it's the harder bit. So you summon an angel and you capture an angel and you work on that plan, and then you keep it chained until you can find someone suitable to inject.
It is interesting, just in this episode that's about mothers, that if he did have an angel tied up, all blood drained, just waiting for a pregnant woman around to inject her with, that Maryse never came up.
Made the list, yeah.
Considering Maryse was pregnant before either Jocelyn or Celine.
Yeah.
We learn that Celine went to him because she was worried about it, specifically to help her. But we also have a fair sense that Maryse was a very, very devoted circle member, that she kind of did pretty much whatever Valentine asked of her.
And more of a sense now than we did last season.
Yes, absolutely.
After, you know, recent ruining revelations.
Right. So it's interesting that it's a very, very small hop to imagine a world in which Alec also was imbued with blood from various creatures who were not.
Yeah, totally. Because, of course, you wouldn't choose Maryse Lightwood to do it to her against her will.
No.
Because she's too high profile for you to be able to kidnap her and keep her in a basement kind of thing.
Also, probably too solid an individual, too high profile an individual for the whole she killed herself and then got mauled by werewolves thing to work out. So
totally.
You'd kind of have to get her on side and on board so that she was willingly doing this, or at least semi-willingly doing this.
And it's a dangerous game game to play if you're not sure that she's going to agree. But yeah, you're totally right with what we learned in this season. She sounded like she would have been willing to agree. So yeah, interesting things.
But just, it would be really interesting to get Maryse Lightwood in a room to ask her all sorts of questions, that and stuff. But it would be really interesting to know whether Maryse had any idea about the kind of loaded nature of pregnant women around Valentine at the time when she was pregnant, not once but twice. Isabel's Jace's age, not only was Maryse pregnant 2 years before that, say, when clearly he had an angel tied up in his basement, but also she was pregnant, had a child, then got pregnant again.
Yeah.
Kind of, there was a lot of significance placed on pregnant women who were around Valentine at that time period. Just be fascinating to know whether Maryse had any idea that this was a thing, whether Valentine ever showed kind of
any interest in
her pregnancy.
Yes.
We've wondered before whether part of what made Maryse depart the circle ultimately was the fact that she had children.
Yeah, absolutely.
At least one small child.
And possibly, some interest in her pregnancy would have encouraged that decision.
Yeah.
Interesting stuff.
Interesting indeed.
We then get our classic, everyone's eyeballs turning white, zoom into Alec's eye, and we get a quick flash summary of the Parapet Bond, like what you wanted in 220.
Yes.
Look, there it is.
Yes, that's exactly what I wanted in 220.
And it works really well here.
I love the sort of sense you get of Alec literally, like, falling into the bond. Like, literally his head is just kind of going into the bond. It's really lovely.
No, it is really nicely done. It is exactly what you needed. And then turns out the inside of Jace's head is really foggy.
Yes. I don't mind the effect, actually.
Oh, no, I think it works.
It works, yeah. It's really striking. It's a very strong effect, as in powerful, rather than powerful as in really, really good.
Yeah.
But I think it works.
I also really like all of the staticky screens.
Yes.
Which I'm not quite sure what I want to read into it, but I'm really, really enjoying it.
I think it just goes into this sense that we have of Lilith shutting off bits of Jace's brain and
memories or
memory and emotion, and God only knows what those screens are supposed to look like in a healthy mind. Kind of the visual we get of the brick wall when the memory dissolves in a bit, and those screens just kind of speak to this kind of like slightly out of focus. That the screens are an out of focus television.
And blow around the edges and pieces of brain dying off.
Yeah.
No, it is really nicely done.
I love that we fall into Alec's eye, and then we really only get a kind of sense as to where they are when Alec opens his eyes again. I wish that we'd got a little bit more of a sense of Isabel being dragged in behind him.
Yeah. Kind of for her to kind of fall through after.
Right.
Even just like a little stumble.
Yes, absolutely.
The camera pulls out into her or something.
Or her opening her eyes a beat after he does.
Yeah.
Because we get a really clear sense of that when they come out of the mindscape at the end. We get a really clear sense that it's Alec who is the kind of connection that pulls them out again.
That comes back, yeah.
And we have Alec and Isabel again doing just such beautiful mirroring work.
Well, the instant turning back to back is lovely.
It's beautiful and completely unconscious. Neither of them glance at one another before they step like that.
And I think that's nice that obviously you're inside Jace's head and you have no idea what's going to happen.
Yes.
So there is a sense of danger, but you're also quite clearly in an abandoned room.
Yes.
So it's not like they're doing it to get into battle stance because something's coming at them. It is just what they do.
And they're both still quite loose-limbed. They don't they don't kind of tense up or pose themselves ready to run or fight or any of those things. They're literally just scanning the premises
and finding out what they're meant to do now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Luckily, however, they do hear swords clashing in a distance. So that's what they're doing now.
Yeah.
We enter a room in which young Lightwoods are training. Baby Jace taunts baby Alec and baby Isabel for it being 2 against 1.
Yep.
And Isabel points out that they're all Lightwoods.
Yep. Beautiful.
That they're all family, which is lovely.
Baby Alec and Isabel have a beautiful moment of this symmetry mirroring thing, just to echo what Matt and Emerald were doing just a second ago. Really, really beautiful. They both sort of fall into the exact same kind of battle stance at exactly the same moment. It's really lovely. It's
also, of course, really lovely that we get the two of them fighting Jace in this flashback. It's again, really nicely written, well done.
Yeah.
And then baby Alec taunts Izzy for being a, softie. And adult Alec remembers that was a really bad thing at the time. And he does this beautiful smile, which is the exact same smile he did in the dojo.
Yeah.
This bit where he suddenly remembers what Isabel did next and how cool it was and how much he loves his baby sister and how proud he is of her.
Yeah.
And it is just, that smile is wonderful. And then you get adult Izzy doing the same thing. You can just see it on their faces that they remember remembering what actually went down that day.
Yeah.
Baby Isabel does have a blade at her throat within about 3 seconds.
Good for her.
Yep.
Interesting to note, just in terms of Lightwood family dynamics, which anybody who's listened to us before knows that I've got a little bit of a fixation on. But
one might say a Lightwood kink.
but interesting that this fond memory Alec has is of a night that their parents were away. Mm-hmm. Not too much to read into that, just like...
No, it's also at that age makes a lot of sense.
It makes a lot of sense, but just interesting to have that kind of codified again here.
And then baby Alec and baby Izzy disappear, and baby Jace freaks out and runs away. Mm-hmm. And they go to follow him. Alex says that they mustn't lose each other, and then they promptly lose each other.
Yep. We get the 3 go in, 3 come out thing from the little ones in this scene too, which obviously is echoed later on.
Yes, and we get it from Jace here.
Yeah. They do another beautiful moment of that mirroring when they both turn around simultaneously to have the
brick
wall
wall
bricked up. They're so good. They're so good at this
They
stuff.
are really good. There's something really nice that actually watching it this morning, because of course I watched the promo for this episode last week, and we were in this fuzzy bit, and I kept waiting for them to be pulled out and bring Jace back, because hey, clever them, they took the fuzzy effect off the promo, which is genius.
Yeah.
And of course it's something you add in afterwards, so they had that footage.
Well, this is the thing. I was absolutely positive that all of that, the Jace begging Alec and Isabel to kill him stuff, was in Magnus's apartment.
Absolutely.
I could have sworn blind to it. Like, really clever.
Yeah, and it makes the fact that it doesn't work out just hit so much harder.
Yeah, and we get that Izzy-Isabel thing that we were talking about just before.
Yes. When Alec loses her.
When Alec loses
saying
her.
he can't lose her.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then we got over to the Sealy Court slaughter.
Yeah.
Is this gruesome?
Really gruesome, really brutal, really effective.
Yeah.
I have to say, just because I've already mentioned it and I won't talk about it again, but this transition out of Mindscape into current real time doesn't bother me too much.
I think this one really works because of the colouring.
Because the colouring, absolutely, because the Sealy realm is a little bit otherworldly anyway.
Kind of foggy and hazier too, yeah.
Because we go into this brutal, quiet, kind of nightmare scene. Like,
yeah, totally.
It works.
I think it's
on this occasion.
But yeah, this is nice. I mean, I actually really like this scene. And again, they did some nice cutting for the promo.
Yeah.
Which they don't always do. Mm-hmm. And they've done really well on this one. Mm-hmm. And I really like that the Sealy Queen kind of tries to blag her way through this and seems fairly confident until the second Lilith steps up to her and she's scrambling backwards, falling over stuff.
All of that stuff we said about Lilith not being super effective. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. This is where she has worked best in a villainy way for me since she was in the hospital looking at babies and talking to Tim Dempsey. The fact that she's scared the Sealy Queen kind of has me quaking in my boots.
Oh yeah, this is how you make a scary thing scarier.
Yep.
Make it intimidate the thing you previously thought was the scariest thing in the world.
Yep.
That's how it's done.
And I think Lola does a really nice job in this of maintaining the Sealy Queeniness, but I feel for her. I feel for her surrounded by the dead bodies of her people. You know, I feel for this slaughter that she's just had to witness.
Yeah, and the fact that we see her kneeling on the ground.
Yes.
Trailing one of the bodies.
Yes.
Which is a very non-regal position. And we've not really seen her do anything other than fairy-like floating through her world. Mm-hmm. And I think she does a fairly good job going up against Anna Hopkins in this scene.
Yes, I think she does too.
Just, acting chops-wise.
Yeah, absolutely. The accent is still dodgy and still bothers me, but
it's the same as always.
It's a consistent dodgy accent. Yeah.
Lilith confronts her about the mark and that she's the one who gave it to Simon and that she wants it removed. The Sealy Queen refuses. Lilith nearly blows her up, but then the Sealy Queen plays her trump card of the lost owl, so she stops.
I really like the Sealy Queen's sort of explanation as to why she's put the mark of Cain on Simon.
Yes, I wanted to talk about that. We preserve precious and unique things in nature.
Yes, I'm not sure how much I believe it entirely, but I like its sort of consistency with the Sealy ethos that we've seen thus far.
Mm-hmm. And it is just another touch of, this might be a lie, or it might just be Sealy lore.
Yeah.
And, always down for that, especially with the Sealys, which we just don't understand. Now, this is also, of course, where we get the mark named, and we get it named the Mark of Cain.
Yes.
Which is kind of where my second bit of trying to make this work and shoehorning it along with the sword comes from.
Yes.
Because it doesn't make sense with Simon's story. There's like, Cain was cursed, and the mark of Cain was to keep him alive. Was basically to prevent a premature death, because he did a bad thing and he was cursed to wander the earth, and he was supposed to live out his punishment. Simon's done nothing wrong.
No, I mean, apart from the kind of punishment aspect, though, I can see some resonance with that story. No?
Hit me.
There's a myth surrounding the daylighter thing. One kind of understands that the fact that he can walk in the daylight may not be uncomplicatedly a good.
Darkness will follow.
Darkness will follow. That there's negatives to this, and that maybe that darkness is contingent upon a certain sequence of events happening in a certain order and a certain time, and that the Seelie Queen, for whatever mysterious reason she has, needs Simon to live long enough to be present at that event.
So you're kind of going with an almost Simon spilled Jace's blood.
Yeah, I think there's blood.
Yeah.
And there's angel blood.
I kind of didn't go back that far, to be honest. Kind of heavenly punishment for spilling angel blood.
I mean, not even necessarily a heavily punishment, but just that he was born in blood kind of thing. That Simon the Vampire was born in blood, and that the Daylighter was born in blood.
Yeah.
That, no, Simon didn't do anything wrong, but that there have to be consequences to this being angel blood that he's carrying about with him. That can't be free. That can't be for nothing. You don't get power for nothing. That's not how it works. That. Yes. So I don't have a particular issue with that being a kind of doom-laden beginning.
Yeah, no, I can get on board with that more, because like the two main interpretations over Cain's punishment and prolonging his life, or certainly preventing premature death, is about either increasing his suffering,
yes,
or about giving him more time to repent for his actions.
Yes, and I'm not sure either of those things fit particularly well with Simon's story.
No, but more what I mean is, like, it's not necessarily just seen as a negative thing.
Right,
it's not just a punishment.
Right, it could be about repentance.
It could go both ways.
Yes. I mean, I'm thinking more that this might be a means of prolonging Simon's life because he's got a very specific purpose to fulfill, and that whether that's something that the Seelie Queen is trying to ensure happens or trying to prevent happening is ambiguous.
Or whether a heavenly purpose, the Seelie Queen putting his mark on Simon's head for her own purpose in destroying Lilith, is just working into heavenly ways.
Possibly.
Of protecting Simon.
Right, possibly. Yeah. It's also interesting that Simon received the mark of Cain after there was a possible Armageddon against all downworlders.
When it really would have been useful.
Right. Except Simon was already in the Seelie Court, so would have been protected anyway, presumably.
Yeah.
I'm just interested that Simon's becoming kind of invincible happened at a very similar time that the entire downworld was put at risk.
Yeah, interesting.
And here we have an episode in which Jaya Penhallow talks about the final solution kind of thing. The failsafe. And that Clary's prevented the failsafe both by deactivating the soul sword and by using Raziel's wish. Just it seems like there's an awful lot of kind of like potential downworlder genocide talk going on in a same kind of time period as Simon has become or been made invulnerable by the Seelie Queen. So maybe that has something to do with it. Anyway, I don't know. We'll see. But I don't have any particular issue with there being resonance in the stories.
I have a lot less issue now.
Good.
I like it. Then we got back to the trial where Clary is once again asked how Jace became possessed. And she talks her way around it until she can't talk around it any longer. At which point the sword noise and the whispering we've been having through the entire scene increases, and then the sword twangs off its pedestal.
Yes.
Which I kind of thought was angelic intervention.
Possibly.
As in, she's not going to tell them because the soul sword's actively being removed from her and they're going to see it as an act of the angels. Except we then continue the scene and she tells them.
Yeah, I was confused about that too. I also thought maybe it was Clary and her angelic runic power kind of counteracting against the sword, because I was kind of down with that notion that the sword wouldn't like work on her and possibly on Jace as well. If he had the sword again after his, awakening of the runic power thing, the angel blood might sort of
have some protection in it. Yeah, but certainly if he got really, really, really pushed and really distressed, then he might do the shortening thing.
But clearly that's not what happens, because Clary then just tells her.
So I kind of have no idea why we're twanging the sword off the pedestal.
I don't know.
It's really odd. But Clary does say she doesn't need the sword to tell the truth, and she tells Gia exactly what happened. And she's a wildcat in this.
Yes.
She is so stupid and reckless and completely inappropriate. And I love it.
Yeah, no, me too. I love that she's found a way of justifying this to herself. I love that she's like decided that actually she's not upset about having used the wish. And I don't know whether this is how she felt before or whether this is an assurance that's come off the back of the absolution she received from Alec last episode.
Yeah, and to some degree from Ethereal.
Yes,
You know, saying that, no, the wish didn't make Jace wrong.
Yes.
Therefore, kind of, you know, not saying it was okay for you to do this, but saying that it certainly wasn't negative, I suppose.
Yeah. But no, I love it. It's great.
And also, she's backed into a corner. She's got literally nowhere to go. She might as well go down fighting.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just love that she takes this in her own hands and makes this her story and fights back.
Yeah, totally. It's also a little false, the whole thing. Jaya's, this was our failsafe, and Clary's, well, I'm glad it's gone because it's a stupid failsafe. All of which I agree that that's a stupid failsafe because they could wish for anything.
Yep.
There's this weird kind of like idea that the wish from Raziel is just to obliterate all demon-blooded creatures.
Yeah.
Like, is the angel not intelligent enough to distinguish between demons and downworlders? Because surely if...
I'd hope so.
If the worst came to the worst and they had to make this wish, then you can wish for all the demons to be obliterated.
Yeah, I don't think Clary's saying that you using the kill all demons as a failsafe is going to kill all downworlders. I think what Clary's saying is that this wish means that there's also the other option of someone like Valentine going to make that wish.
I don't have so much issue with Clary as with Jaya saying that this is what the wish is for.
Right, yeah.
Like, that she's being so prescriptive about what the wish is for. Because if the world is ending, the world might end in any number of myriad ways, like spell gone wrong, black hole...
Trump blows us all up.
No, Trump blows us all up. Demons everywhere, whatever. But the wish surely fail-safe because you could wish whatever it was to...
Like the world not to be ending.
The world not to be ending?
Yeah. I'm assuming it's literally just they've not seen the mirror in hundreds of years.
Yes.
Kind of thing. So all of this has become very much myth and legend.
Yeah.
And the Shadowhunters are really, really good at having a story and then kind of sticking to it and not questioning at any point.
Totally.
So I think it's just kind of become ingrained that if the world is overrun with demons, you can make this one wish and fix it.
Yes.
And no one's kind of paused to think that, or you could do other stuff.
Yeah.
I think it's just kind of showing this ingrained clave thing.
Yeah.
Whether that's racism
Yes.
or getting stuck in this mythology.
Yes, but because Clary sort of goes along with it in terms of like, Jaya says this thing and then Clary goes, no, but that's a stupid thing because of blah. You know, it's...
Yeah, she could just say, or you could make any other wish kind of thing, yeah.
You remember when we were talking about like Luke and Raphael engaging with the crazy when... It feels a little bit like that.
Yeah.
Jaya might as well have gone, oh, but the wish was for when we get overrun with elephants. And then Clary gone, oh, but when we get overrun with elephants, we should just wish for more zookeepers. Like, rather than engaging with the kind of intrinsic ridiculousness of that being what would necessarily be what the wish was for.
That metaphor was so much more fun than your last one about red and green apples.
Right.
I like the elephant one.
Right.
But, yeah, no, totally.
You know what I mean?
Totally.
So like, don't engage with the ridiculous theory because it gives the ridiculous theory weight, you know.
But other than that, Clary's awesome.
Yes, no, Clary is awesome. Very much like Clary in this scene.
And then we cut over to the police station where Maryse tells Luke that Clary's on trial, and Luke goes a little bit crazy.
Yes.
And plans to invade Alicante with the help of some feral werewolves, and Maryse tells him not to, and Luke leaves.
Yeah, pretty much.
There's that scene in short.
Yes.
I really hope that next episode opens with Maryse going after him.
I hope so. I don't know.
Because she's not involved in any of the rest of the plot. This is the only thing she knows about.
Yeah.
So surely she must go after him.
Yes.
And then they rescue Clary together. And that's what, makes them fall in love.
Maybe.
Kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, missioning together is surefire way to...
A word for Simon and Maia.
Kickstart romantic relationships, yes, totally.
And then we cut back to real Talto without the basement bit, where Simon and Jordan and Maia enter. They smell abnormal blood.
Yep.
I don't know how blood smells abnormal.
I don't know either, but...
They do.
They do, so that's fine.
They find the altar. They conclude that it's 20 plus different people's blood. Now, I kind of wonder whether blood of different people would actually smell smell different from each other? I don't see how. Because surely anything that affects the smell of blood is things like iron content. And once you mix 20 different people's blood, you've got all of the elements that is in blood, just in a big puddle.
I don't know, kind of all blood smells like blood to me. I mean, I guess you could be smelling the people on the altar letting their blood.
There's a kind of general human smell around the blood.
I don't know. I don't have any particular issue.
Well, I don't know, but it just made me ponder about the smell of blood.
I've no information on this.
It's because you're not a werewolf.
Right.
Jordan works out that the altar has a lid, and they lift it off, and they find some demonic resurrection symbols, which is handy for blood, flesh, and heart.
Yeah.
So that's worrying.
Yeah.
Because we got 2 of those bits.
Yeah.
After they find the symbols, Simon goes to call Luke with an update, with a slight hesitation over leaving Maia and Jordan by themselves. We cut back to inside Jace's head. We follow Isabel following the sound of piano music, and she finds baby Jace playing it, and she convinces him to trust her with a lullaby.
Yeah.
Which is so cheesy, and I cried so much.
Yeah, I have to say, I like it because Emerald Tabia can't really sing.
Yeah, I think it's lovely.
I think it works because neither of the actors are particularly good singers.
It's like they've both got really sweet voices, but they're not singers.
Yeah.
And when they sing together, they're like not completely out of sync, but slightly out of sync.
Yeah.
And it's just lovely.
I also love the way that Isabel engages with Jace at childhood, and Alec engages with Jace at current adulthood.
Yeah.
Just, we won't talk about it later because we've got other things to talk about in the Alec bit of this sequence.
Yep.
But there's something really lovely about Isabel being the one who gets to reach out to Jace as a little boy, that they're connecting over a shared childhood, which is something that absolutely all 3 of them have in common and have a connection that is before the Parabatai bond.
Yeah.
That this is at this point in Jace's life when he was this kid. Alec may have been his bestest mate, who knows, but they were a threesome in a way that hadn't been in any way confused or muddled by the Parabatai bond.
Yeah. Alec and Izzy are on much more equal ground.
Yes.
At that age.
Yes, absolutely. So it's really lovely that she reaches out to him, and this is the point at which she connects with him.
And we then cut over to Alec, who finds a room full of dead Clarys and adult Jace weeping on the bed over having stabbed the latest Clary.
I love the pacing of Alec's entrance into this room. I love that he comes into the room, sees the blood on the floor, sees Clary's body, kneels down, kind of tries to almost nurse her, then catches sight of the other Clarys.
Yeah.
And then kind of pulls back, and the camera almost follows him as he rises. Like, it's almost like we get up to Alec height and then see the rest of the bodies.
And then pan across the room.
And we pan across the room, we see all of the bodies, we see all of the myriad bodies. Then we see Jace, but he's almost a nondescript shape at first. It's like we haven't even identified him as a person yet.
Well, he also really works that Alec is looking for Isabel at this point.
Yes.
He's kind of almost paused his search for Jace.
Right.
Because he's looking for Isabel, and he calls her name as he enters the room.
Yeah.
And then he picks up on everything else.
Yes.
And then he picks up on Jace.
Yes.
It's just this really nice, slow stumble.
Yeah.
Which, works with this entire dreamlike sequence. And Alec approaches Jace like a spooked horse, with his hand up and this really, really soft spoken reassurance.
I like the way Jace engages with him at first completely as if he's part of the dreamscape. Like, he doesn't question his presence at all.
No, absolutely, because this is what he's been going through this entire time.
Right, and, maybe he's seen an Alec in here before. Maybe this isn't entirely new, or maybe he's just used to weird things happening in this place.
Yeah.
It's not until Alec convinces him that he's real, that this isn't like the rest of the world, that he engages with him in any different sort of way. He's so stuck in this cycle of murdering Clary and crying, and then murdering Clary and then crying,
Yeah. Well, I think there's almost an element where it kind of doesn't even matter that Alec is standing there.
Yeah.
The bit where he's reassuring himself that he didn't mean to, that he tried not to, that he tries not to every time. He probably did that over every single Clary he killed.
Yes.
Whether someone was in the room or not.
Also, there's a kind of delightful, beautiful subtext to that maybe Alec is always the conscience that he's talking to when he's saying that sort of thing.
Yeah. You're going to make me cry again.
I'm sorry. But, that maybe it's the Alec in his head that he always says these things to.
Yeah. And then, of course, the next thing we get, before he realises that it's real Alec, is him turning around and saying that he can't kill him too.
That's the bit where I choked.
God, it is so good. And then Alec manages to convince Jace, and they hug, and Jace sobs, and I sob, I was very dehydrated by the end of this episode.
Yeah. Alec's voice, the delivery of his lines before they hug is just so gorgeous. How steady he's holding himself and how choked he is, how on the verge of tears he sounds. It's just beautiful.
No, this scene is stunning.
Beautiful.
And then they pull back from the hug and all of the Clarys have disappeared.
All the Clarys have disappeared and there's sunshine in the room.
Yes. Yeah, I suppose there is, yeah.
Alec convinces him that he's real, that he's going to be okay, that he has him. The Clary corpses disappear and there's sunshine in the room.
Yeah.
This room, which has been grayscale, including Alec.
Yeah.
Alec, through this scene, has been like washed out grayscale, just like the rest of the room. And then you pan out and there's sunshine. There's spots of sunshine on the rug and there's like glimmers of red and gold in
some
the
actual
carpet.
colours, yeah.
It is so beautiful. That shot of the sunshine coming through the door is just gorgeous.
Yeah, I mean, there's something about that sunlight that I was actually thinking about in the baby Lightwood training scene as well, because you've got kind of 4 or 5 of those spotlights.
Yeah, that really confused me in that there were more of the spotlights than they were standing in, because I think the spots of light works really beautifully in that this is a really isolated happy or comfort or warmth in Jace's really bleak, barren world at the moment.
Because obviously the baby Lightwoods was a happy memory that then disappeared. The kind of lights disappeared.
Right, and on the floor here you get these 2 quite distinct patches of sunshine, and you get 2 quite distinct patches of sunshine because Alec's there and then Isabel turns the corner and then there's, you know, that kind of works, however intentional that is. There's a real symbolism there. But yeah, I mean, it's not perfect because I was a little confused by why there were spots of light other than the one that the 3 little Lightwoods were in.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure it's intended to be like a perfect analogy, but
they're spots of happiness, absolutely.
They're spots, and the important thing is that they're isolated spots, so you can see them distinctly, so you can see how few there are. You can see how like sparse they are.
How little remaining happiness Jace has.
Yeah.
Poor baby.
But yeah, Alec literally clears away the corpses and brings the sunshine into the room with him.
And baby Jace brings Izzy into the room to stand in her spot of light.
Absolutely. And again, in terms of Isabel connecting Jace with his childhood, I love that as soon as grown-up Jace recognises Isabel, baby Jace is gone.
Yeah.
You know, that he's sort of re-embraced baby Jace into himself almost.
No, it's a beautiful, beautiful scene.
And then we get the cut that bothered me so much.
Yes, I mean, this cut is really harsh, but also the scene's kind of nonsense on top of it.
Yeah.
Which doesn't help.
There is something about all of the Mindscape stuff being so loaded that I really would have liked to have just been in it.
Yeah.
I really need that final cut when we cut back to Magnus's loft and Lilith is there. I need that to be really, really brutal. And it's a bit brutal, the cut, but it's not as brutal as it would have been if we'd been in that mindscape for 5 or 6 straight minutes before.
No, absolutely. It's also, you really want them being pulled out to be this breath of fresh air from this oppressive, foggy world.
Yes.
To enter Magnus's loft and then have Lilith come in.
Exactly.
Whereas, we're literally stepping not just back into the Church of Talto, which is quite oppressive, but out into the New York air.
Yes, yeah. But no, everything
is real life.
Right, everything in this scene with Simon is just a little bit fresh and crisp and sharp and inconsequential.
Yeah.
Like, at least cutting from the Mindscape to the Sealy Court scene felt weighty, like felt continually loaded.
Oh, totally, and set up Lilith at the end.
But the scene itself feels... Whereas this kind of feels inconsequential. Simon's telling Luke information that we already know because we were there when they found it out. So,
and Luke's not telling Simon anything.
Luke doesn't,
because he's being difficult this episode.
Right.
And that's it.
So really all of this information we could have had by Simon coming back into the Church of Talto and telling Maia and Jordan that Luke's gone AWOL, which is kind of the information that we need to impart. So yeah, it just doesn't work for me at all, this cut.
And then we cut back into the church where Jordan really, really wants Maia to know that he's changed, and Maia really, really doesn't want to hear it.
Yep.
Because it took her forever to get over him, and she just wants to hate him.
Yes. I also think quite important distinction. Didn't take her forever to get over him. It took her forever to get past it.
Yes, fair. And I have less problems with Jordan in this scene than I had with him in the van.
Yes.
But Maia did quite clearly say last episode that if what he's looking for is her forgiveness, that's not going to happen.
Yes.
So, what are you doing?
Yeah, I don't know.
Back off.
Pushing his own agenda is what he's doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Being self-interested, not really caring about whether she forgives him or not. Just caring caring about whether he's forgiven.
Yeah. Maia freaks out and starts to turn, and there's a nice bit where Jordan tells her to breathe, and then Simon comes in and, grabs her and hugs her and calms her down and stops her.
I love that Maia allows herself to be soothed by Simon. That she lets him hold her, that she lets him calm her down, and then walks away.
Yeah, no, totally.
That he's still a comfort to her, even though she's not sure she can be around him right now. He's still a comfort.
Yeah, I think it's the being a comfort, but also having enough self-awareness that leaving mid-aggravation and potential mid-transformation is not helpful.
Yes.
That she needs to calm down before she gets to leave to be upset. We got back to Magnus's loft, where Magnus calls to Alec to say that he's running out of time, and Alec hears him inside of Jace's head.
Yeah, there's a really beautiful angle where you get Magnus saying, Alexander, if you can hear me, please hurry, you've got to hurry, or whatever it is he says. And then it cuts over like it's cutting to Alec standing across from Magnus in the loft. But it's Alec in his head, and Alec is sort of standing exactly as he would have been in the loft. It's just a really kind of like, we're back in his head kind of thing.
Nice directing.
Yes. Yeah, very nice direction. Interesting, the little look that Jace and Alec share when Alec hears the hurry in his head and says, we have to go. Then his parapetide rune lights up. Jace's does too, and Jace looks down at it and then looks up at him like kind of surprised. And I think maybe he hadn't really clocked that it was real until then.
And also how.
Yes. I think maybe there's a kind of,
this is what we do.
My God, this is how this is working. This is what's happening. It's a nice little sort of solidity. And I think in regards to what Jace asks of Alec and Isabel in the remainder of the scene, kind of means that Jace knows that they could kill him because they really are there, because the parapetide bond is a real bond. It's not just like some sort of hocus pocusy, mystical, spiritual thing to Jace and Alec. It's a very real, solid, physical thing.
Yeah. But I think in that same breath, it also means that Alec and Izzy could really save him.
Totally.
So him asking them to kill him is genuine.
Yeah.
This isn't just, I'm stuck in this dream sequence and I'm killing Clary over and over again and I'm being tortured and losing all my memories and I want it to stop.
Yeah.
This is a genuine, you can't take me back to the real world.
Yeah.
You have to kill me here.
Yeah.
Jay says he doesn't want to leave because Lilith's going to take him again. She's going to get him back. She's going to make him do worse things than she already has. And then he tries to get Alec to kill him, and Alec refuses, so he tries to get Izzy to kill him. And after too much hesitation, Izzy also refuses. And you know what I do?
You cry?
I cry a lot.
Yeah.
And Izzy says, 3 go in, 3 come out.
Yes.
And they hold hands, and we stop here.
Yes. Okay. So, other than the fact that obviously all of them are really, really beautifully brilliant in this scene.
Yep.
Dom is particularly beautifully brilliant in this scene. He's heart-wrenching in this scene. But a few things to kind of pull out in isolation. He presses the dagger into Alec's hands. Alec says no, never, and twists his hands so that he's clasping Jace's around the knife in exactly the same way he was clasping Magnus's just a little bit ago on the balcony. But also, he doesn't try and take the knife from him. Isabel knocks the knife out of his hands, and Alec doesn't take the knife from him. And obviously, in terms of the blocking of the scene, he needs to not take the knife from him because
Isabel needs it next,
Right. But I kind of like that Alec's not disarming him.
Because, of course, it wouldn't be a problem for Alec to take the knife or drop the knife and for Jace to pick it up and give it to Izzy.
Yes.
You could do that.
It would be awkward and it would prevent Jace doing that gutting, but quite nice, like, you said no, okay, on to the next thing that he does. It's very, very kind of brisk, you know, he's moving on to ask Isabel.
I also really like how quickly he moves on.
Yeah.
The fact that he knows there's no convincing Alec after he said no.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that he says, I've tried so many times, but clearly he can't kill himself.
Yes, because he's in his own head.
Because he's in his own head.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, God, this scene.
Yeah. So he turns to ask Isabel, and I think she genuinely is not sure what she should do.
Yeah.
You know,
I think her hesitation is genuine, and also I really like that it's there.
Yeah.
And I think it's quite interesting contrasted to Gia Penhallow's end scene in the cell with Clary.
Yeah.
Going, yes, of course I would let my daughter die.
Yeah.
In a heartbeat.
Yeah.
It is nice that you've got this moment of kind of Shadowhunter training thing on the line that's going on. You know, we said at some point last week that maybe there does come a point where they're going to have to make a call and say, Jace is beyond saving.
Yeah.
And they're not going to be able to make that call. But I like how instant that is with Alec. And I like that there's hesitation with Izzy.
Yeah.
And yeah, of course she was never going to do it. But there is a moment of her that is clearly thinking that maybe she should.
Maybe this would be the kindest thing.
Yeah. Maybe this is what she should be doing. And she can't.
Yes. And I love that she checks with Alec, that she asks him to sort of affirm that she's doing the right thing by not.
Yeah.
Like, this is the right call, isn't it? I am sure about this. This is the right call. I mean, I think this does kind of come back to that thing that we've talked about several times about Alec and Isabel and faith and rationality. That Alec does have faith. Alec does have vision and hope in a kind of hope for the future kind of a way, rather than in a hope about anything specifically individual in the moment. But I think Alec has a huge amount of faith in people, and certainly a fairly unending amount of faith in his siblings. I don't think there's a flicker of hesitation in Alec's mind that they will put this right, that they found Jace. He's found Jace now in his head, and Jace is still Jace. This is Jace, really Jace, that he's found.
And they're back together, and he did okay by himself, so they're definitely going to be fine now they're back together.
And he also has a fairly unending amount of faith in Magnus's magic, and certainly in Magnus himself. So he's found Jace, he's held up his end, so Magnus is going to hold up his end, he's going to pull them out, and they're going to work it out, they're going to figure it out, they're going to work the problem. That's the Alec Lightwood way. Isabel doesn't think like that. She doesn't do that. She looks at the evidence in front of her. She looks at Jace, who is distraught and weak and failing and wanting to die and is locked in this awful, awful place, and they may not be able to pull him out. And when they do pull him out, it may not be for good. She's playing that rationality in her head, and the scientific conclusion to draw is that maybe there is a kindness in putting him out of his misery.
Yeah, maybe it's the kind of thing for him and the rest of the world.
Alec doesn't work like that. You know, he calculates risk, he calculates consequence of everything, but he does have a blind spot when it comes to his loved ones.
Yeah. And then he does what's in his heart.
Yes.
No, absolutely. I think there's also a really nice thing in regards to what you said a minute ago about Alec not disarming Jace in his scene, and Isabel checking with Alec. And Alec shakes his head. He doesn't reach for the blade.
Yeah.
He doesn't stop her hands.
Yeah.
He lets her make the decision, but he also trusts her to ultimately make the decision.
Yeah.
But again, he doesn't reach for the blade. He doesn't disarm Jace or Isabel in this scene.
Yeah. I also think there's maybe an interesting thing where he trusts Jace to have the sense to listen to them in the end. Like, he thinks they're going to be able to convince him.
Of course, they're both saying no, that's 2 against 1. Whereas Valak says no and then stops Izzy from doing it.
Yes.
That's still only 1 against 1 with Izzy not counting.
Yeah. But, you know, I really like that Alec doesn't disarm him. I completely understand why Isabel does.
I would.
Yep. But again, that's that practicality against the faith thing again.
Yeah.
You know, having the faith that Jace won't use the blade is not the same thing as making sure he won't use the blade by taking the blade away from him. It's interesting that Jace asks Alec to kill him because he needs him to. That the way he tries to convince Alec to kill him is just by pretty much saying, I need you to do this.
Yeah.
And the way he tries to convince Isabel to kill him is by telling her all the awful things that he's done.
Yeah.
This is why I deserve killing.
Yeah. Turns out they're a basket of onions too.
Yeah.
Which once again explains why I cried so much. I think the other thing between the two of them is that, as you say it, that Alec cups his hands around Jace's and that Jace is holding the blade and he's putting Izzy's hands around his.
Yeah.
He's kind of trying to get Alec to do the deed.
Yeah.
Whereas all he needs from Izzy is the physical push. You know, he can hold and aim the blade.
Yes.
He just needs an actual person to do it.
Yeah.
I think there's something very nice about the hand position.
Yeah.
But we don't kill Jace.
We don't kill Jace. Izzy takes his hand, says 3 go in, 3 come out.
Yeah, I'm so ridiculously happy about the fact that they don't split those lines.
Yes.
That Jace says 3 go in, 3 come out, and Izzy says 3 go in, 3 come out.
Yes.
It would be so cheesy.
It would be really, really cheesy. It would be really inappropriate for Jace to say it. It would make it sound like they convinced him somehow when they haven't.
No, I mean, it would have to be Alec, but it would be awful.
It would be awful. It's also not what Alec's doing in this moment. He's got a different role to play.
And of course, the other thing is just from an aesthetic kind of thing. It's a 2-part sentence. Therefore, you're not going to split that between 3 characters.
Yes. So it's always going to be imbalanced if you've got a thing between 3 characters.
Like, it's always jarring. But I was kind of literally biting my nails thinking they might.
The thing is, though, of course it's Isabel, because Isabel's the link to their childhood.
Yes, yeah.
You know, in the end of this scene, Isabel reinforces their history, their childhood, their family, their Lightwoods together. That's what little Isabel says, that we're all Lightwoods.
Yeah, totally.
That's what she's saying here. We're all Lightwoods. We're here together. We're just the same as we always were. Alec's got a different role to play. He's playing Parabatai. He's not playing brother. And that's why they're both here. That's why it's important that Isabel came into Jace's mind with Alec. That's why it's important that it was Alec and Isabel, because it can't be Clary. And that's why it's so important that Clary's so removed from all of this plot line.
Totally.
She's not here. She's not a factor. She can't be a factor because the people who Jace still unequivocally, unquestionably loves, that Lilith has not tainted in any way, and we know she has not tainted them in any way because there they were in his head when Alec and Isabel first turned up, is his parabatai and his family.
Yeah.
That's what they are. It's beautiful.
It is really nicely done. And then, of course, before Jace takes Alec's hand, he says, please don't let her take me again. And Alec promises.
Yeah.
And then I cry.
And then you cry. Yeah. Obviously, there is kind of mystical spell reasons for there to be a pause before Jace takes Alec's hand. Like, as soon as he takes Alec's hand, they're out. They're back in the real world. So that makes sense. But there's also, because Jace is asking him for a promise and Alec is delivering a promise, that means that the hand is also the promise.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Jace is literally putting his life in Alec's hand. That's what he's doing. You know, there's a kind of, I am asking you to protect my life, to keep my life, to protect my soul.
Yeah.
And Alec is promising, and Jace is putting his life and his soul in Alec's hand. It is such simple symbolism, and it works so beautifully because of it.
Yeah, it's so striking because of it. And it's beautiful that when we cut to Magnus's loft, and again, spell-wise, this is perfectly fine. They get thrown apart, but of course you've also got the three of them clasping hands, making this promise, and then being torn apart.
Yeah.
It is really nice.
Yeah.
And then Lilith enters through the balcony, strangles Magnus up against a bit of wall with some magic. Magnus tells her to go ahead and kill him, but not to hurt Alec and Izzy.
He's got no bargaining chips here. I'm not sure why on earth he thinks she should listen to him.
No, I also don't know. And people do always do this. Don't point out to people that are unconscious over there that, you know, the super evil lady hasn't noticed up to this point.
Yeah.
And don't give away the one thing that you could be tortured with. I will do anything, just don't hurt those people. Oh, thanks for that. He's being strangled up against the wall by the Queen of Hell.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, if ever there was a moment to make dumb decisions,
Yes.
this is it.
Yes.
And Lilith says that she won't kill him because she doesn't really want to piss off his daddy. And then she leaves with Jace, and Alec and Isabel wake up.
And Magnus says, I'm sorry.
He does. For kind of the one thing this season that really wasn't his fault.
Yep.
Yeah.
The only other thing I had before we kind of move into the sort of next scene, the after the fade to black, is that Alec's sort of punch to the floor is interesting in how uncharacteristic it kind of is.
Yeah, I wasn't quite sure about it because he doesn't lose it like that very often.
Yeah.
And he kind of doesn't lose it enough
Yes.
for it to work.
Yeah, I thought it wasn't quite enough. I mean, I think also Matt's in a bit of an awkward position for that kind of thing. I mean, he's lying kind of reclined on the floor and all he's got to strike out against is a carpeted floor, so it's never going to be like that dramatic in terms of sound or
and you've got no heft in that angle in the first place.
So I can see what they were going for, but it doesn't quite come off. Anyway, small note.
But yes, we cut to slightly later, and Alex says he begged us to kill him. Izzy talks about all of the terrible things that Lilith's going to make Jace do now she has him back, and Alex says we promised him we wouldn't let her take him. At which one Magnus says you did all you could, and Alec kind of stops, looks at him, turns to Isabel, and repeats we promised him.
Yeah.
And I really like this. Because, you know, last episode, the one before, where we talked about the fact that Magnus is outside of this because he's not one of the Lightwoods and how he might have to make a call at some point.
Yeah.
And how this is like the dinner scene times a billion.
Yeah.
And I don't know what happens after the billion, but this is that. Just this moment of Alec just wanting to be punished, to be allowed to stay in his guilt. He doesn't want Magnus to make excuses for what happened or say that it wasn't his fault.
It's just, I think, so inadequate.
Yeah.
What
It
Magnus says.
doesn't do anything.
Like, I did all I could, you know? Like, I did all I could. It's like, I promised him and he's gone.
Yeah.
And I think there's also whoever Alec and Isabel and Jace are to each other, however much Magnus was always going to be on the outside of this. There's also, Magnus didn't see Jace like that.
No, absolutely.
Alec and Isabel are both still so raw with this. They're still so in that final scene, which again is kind of why I wish the whole Mindscape had been in one, because I kind of feel like if we'd still been kind of reeling from not being in that scene anymore, this would have more impact. Would work better. I mean, and I think it works pretty well as it stands, but I think it could...
No, totally.
I think it could work better, you know.
You could turn it up to 11.
Right.
But yeah, of course, Magnus has no idea what went down. And, you know, what else is he going to say other than
nothing.
You did all you could?
This isn't on Magnus at all. And it's interesting that for my money, funny, this feels like the only moment where Magnus does take steps to try and comfort Alec. Because he moves towards him, he steps towards him, like if Alec allowed himself to be comforted in that moment, he would be there to offer it.
Yeah.
But it's just not. It's just not happening. There is no comfort in this scene. I am so interested that Isabel doesn't try and touch Alec, because whilst Magnus and Alec have been holding each other at a distance for the past few episodes, so this is kind of a continuation of the mode they've been in, Isabel is hugely touchy-feely with particularly Alec. They touch all the time. They hug all the time.
Yeah.
There's very few instances where she enters a room without touching him in some way.
Yeah, I think it's just a really nice depiction of how raw they are from this.
There's no comfort to be had.
How stuck in their heads they all are, and how individual that experience was for all of them, including Alec and Izzy, who had the same experience, except of course they didn't. And that, of course, Alec would turn to Izzy and say, we promised him.
Yeah.
Because she was right there with him.
Yeah, I think it's also kind of important visually, impactfully, for Jace to be the only person that either of them embrace in this episode. Just it means that when we do get those moments of embrace, you feel it more.
Yeah, no, they're really visually striking.
The musical cue's interesting.
Yes, which is Heart by Jessie Ware. I really like it, actually.
Yeah, I like it. I like that it sort of re-emphasises the wordlessness of the final moments of the Magnus Alec Isabel scene. There is so nothing any of them can say. There's no words for this. So the fact that we get a very heavily lyrical song quite high up in the mix means that we're not trying to hear them say anything. We're not waiting for them to say anything, because obviously they can't.
Yeah. And also, of course, there is always two ways to play this, which is actually just going for the silence and being brave enough to go for the silence. But you can only do that, I feel, if that's where your episode ends.
Yes, totally.
You can't then cut into another two scenes.
No.
So the song carrying over into the next scene works really well. And beautiful song.
Yeah.
This will be another one that's going to be really high up on my iTunes rotation. But we do cut over to Hunter's Moon, where Maia is leaving with a bag, kind of putting weight on the theory that she lives there.
I mean, I suppose she could have an apartment above the Hunter's Moon.
Totally. Clearly her stuff's there. Simon catches up with her, says that, I know that you wanted me to stay away, but I've never been good at, doing what I'm told. And Maia says she just needs to get away for a while. She needs to clear her head, work out what she's feeling.
Yep.
And asks whether Simon can give her space. And he hugs her and gives her space.
Yes.
So Maia ignoring this big looming evil.
Yeah.
That she a second ago wasn't going to ignore.
Yeah, so this is the thing that I've kind of been waiting till this point to talk about all episode.
Okay, go.
Obviously, there's a lot of stuff going on for Maia personally in terms of Jordan and her feelings about that and her feelings about Simon and how confused she is, which means that for her character, it's absolutely right that she step away, try and take some time to regroup, and we'll see her when she's got her head together.
And she's been very outside the A-plot.
Yes.
Up to this point anyway.
I mean, she's been outside the A-plot for forever, but yes, totally. She's very much been in her own storyline for the past few episodes, so there's that totally. And that's all fine. I'm all down with that for Maia herself. What I find interesting in terms of Simon is how he worked to keep her out of this in the earlier scene, how that is playing into what I get is a sense of responsibility for bringing her into this mess in this scene, and that kind of residual background fact that Isabel's already in this mess.
Yep.
And we had that interaction with them earlier. Now, as we've said before, the Simon and Izzy thing isn't a thing until it's a thing. But this is the first episode where I've actually felt like there may be a lead into this that may not feel entirely superimposed because fan feelings.
Yeah, I can see that. Though I just really wish that couples on television didn't break up because of weird, crazy external circumstances.
Yes, I mean, this isn't Simon and Maia breaking up.
No, it's not, but I'm just really worried that this is what they're going to break up over.
I think that's entirely possible. And my mentioning Isabel in this circumstance is not because I either think they are going to or hope they will get them together in the next two episodes. Not by any stretch of the imagination. Just, I think there's a tension there that is interesting and is allowing me to feel the potential of that conflict.
Oh, yeah, totally.
And that relationship in a way that I've not felt before.
Yeah, it's unlike season 2. They actually have a connection now, and we can now build on this connection.
Right. But in terms of Simon and Maia, there's just this real sudden understanding that Maia doesn't have have to be involved in any of this. Simon does. Simon's got too many kind of dogs in this fight, you know. He's involved now. There's no getting Simon out of this. There's no Simon walking away, because it would mean him walking away from everybody he loves and everything he is. But Maia doesn't have to be involved in this. She's just a girl who happens to be a werewolf.
And also, her, of course, I'm going to help you find the big evil earlier, was because it was Simon.
Yeah.
Whereas now what she needs is space from Simon.
Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose it's fair enough to get out of town before, you know, the town explodes.
Yeah. And, you know, I don't think any less of Maia for this.
No, I haven't got an issue with Maia at all. It is literally just this, okay, so we're one man down in a fight that we're clearly building up to.
Yes, but I think one of the interesting things about this scene is, for me, it made me sort of go, oh God, we never even had her in this fight.
And I suppose you were never actually on the countable list.
We were counting you and we shouldn't have been. Because you hadn't opted in yet.
Yeah.
Everybody else had opted in.
Yeah.
Everybody else has sort of gone, no, I'm here, I'm in, you know, this is me and my life, and
I'm researching,
else.
I'm helping, I'm looking.
Right.
Yeah. No, fair point.
But that's kind of the thing. Is like, I didn't feel like I'd lost her. I feel like we'd been so absurdly ahead of ourselves and presumptive to count her in the first place. Like, what right did we have, what right did Simon have to count her in this fight before she'd chosen that for herself?
Yeah. No, totally. Totally fair point. And good on you, Maia, for getting out, because we took her for granted.
Right.
And she's not that kind of woman.
Yeah. Anyway, just lovely stuff. I love, again, how self-possessed Maia is. Like, this is what she needs to do, and she's just going to go and do it.
Yeah.
Like, she's not going to talk about it. She's not going to faff about. She's
not going to ask permission.
She's not going to ask permission. And this isn't about Simon. She's not got anything against Simon. She's not angry with Simon or hurt. She has nothing against him. She'll talk to him later. But this isn't about him. This is about her.
Yeah.
God, YA heroines all over. Take freaking notes. Yeah. There are so not enough female characters like Maia Roberts on television. Yeah. It's just beautiful. No excuses, no explanations. Just, this is what I need to do for me, and I'm going to go.
Yeah. And the thing I like is that none of it is callous.
No.
It's just self-preservation.
Yeah.
And self-care.
Yeah.
Yeah, as you say, it's nothing to do with Simon.
No.
It's about her. And then we got to our last scene. We are in the cell with Clary, who basically challenges Consul Penhallow, saying, if it'd been Aileen on the beach, what would you have done? And Gia tells us that they'd still have the wish now.
Yeah.
Because the one thing that Clary never got is that being a Shadowhunter is all about sacrifices. But she's going to learn it now, because they're going to kill her.
Right. Obviously, this is the third mother in our episode, just to kind of double down on that theme.
This one doesn't like her daughter. And her daughter was delightful.
I think there's an interesting question. Kind of being a Shadowhunter is all about sacrifice, which is certainly something that chimes with the read on proper Shadowhunting that we had from Alec, certainly in the first season.
Oh, yeah.
You know, that kind of, yes, okay, that makes sense, that being a Shadowhunter is all about sacrifice. You know, there's a question, does Clary understand that being a Shadowhunter is all about sacrifice?
No, of course not.
Not really. Should she understand? I'm not sure, because kind of the lesson we learned with Alec was that it shouldn't be about sacrifice, it should be about something else.
Also, third follow-up question, is it going to make her understand? No, because killing her has got nothing to do with sacrifice.
Right, well, that's a sort of secondary issue. I mean, obviously primary issue for Clary, but secondary issue for my narrative exploration. But, you know, I think that's maybe something that we need to consider going forward, this idea of Shadowhunters and sacrifice, and whether that's something that sort of chimes with us and with Clary as we proceed forward. Because, you know, spoiler alert, I really don't think they're going to kill Clary.
50-50.
But that's something that maybe we and Clary need to give some thought to.
I also really like that this challenge doesn't work, because it would be really, really weird if Consul Penhallow had turned around and gone, yes, you're absolutely right, of course, let me free you.
Yeah.
But also, we've had the High Inquisitor, who was scary, really, really soften up in her old age.
Yeah.
And, you know, then die.
Yeah. And do a little bit of racist genocide stuff in the middle.
Well, you know, those teenage years. We all act out.
Those teenage years when you're 65 and a racist and contemplating genocide.
And obviously, Maryse has gone all mellow on us.
Yep.
It turns out there's no other people in Alicante.
Nope.
So we kind of need someone to be fierce in the Clave.
Yes, I mean, I really like that they sentenced Clary to death.
Yeah.
I mean, sounds a bit weird, I know, but I feel like the Clave have been soft-pedalling for a while. You know, turns out that being de-ruined isn't as big a deal as we thought it was going to be.
Means nothing.
Evidently. Inquisitor Herondale was certainly soft on on our guys, even if she was a little bit of the racist, fascist, genocide type, but it has kind of felt like the Clave, which needs to be a kind of constant and present threat in order to justify our Shadowhunters wandering all the way around the houses to avoid doing things by the book.
Yeah.
It's felt a little bit lacking in that regard, and then they sentenced Clary to death, and you're sort of like, fair dues, you know,
So,
that's...
okay.
And kind of, from their perspective, they sort of should. I mean, obviously, that's allowing for a culture in which the death penalty is acceptable, which I don't think it is, but that's a kind of separate issue.
Well, I think there's also the problem where, up to this point, death penalty was never spoken about. The worst thing that could happen to you as a Shadowhunter was de-runing. And I find that a bit odd, because I was expecting her to go, well, you're now going to learn about sacrifice. We're going to de-rune you.
Yeah.
And that would have been really wishy-washy. Kind of beautiful in the symmetry. You know, open the season with her getting her angelic rune, end the season with her losing her runes. But you can't do that, especially because you just did it to Maryse off-screen and it didn't really do anything.
Right. I mean, obviously, the only character that we have talked about execution with was Valentine.
Yeah, and, you know, that was refused.
Yes, because of the mortal instruments, not because they were so against the death penalty.
Yes, I suppose so.
I don't doubt that they were planning on killing Valentine eventually.
But kind of equating Clary with Valentine.
But she used the wish.
Yeah, they do really like that wish.
Like, I think every bit of information we have suggests that that's not just, like, against the rules, but is blasphemous.
Yeah. They do like the wish and they do like the angel thing. I suppose it is just the lack of ever having had this mentioned before when we've talked about de-runing so many times as the ultimate punishment.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Clary's going to die. And end credits.
And credits.
Yes. So I don't feel the need to circle back to a lot.
No, I don't either.
Also, I have no more tears left, so...
I mean, I kind of feel like we're inevitably going to have some stuff to talk about at the beginning of next week's episode, possibly with some feedback from you lovely listener types. So I kind of feel comfortable leaving it there for now.
And I kind of feel like we shot ourselves in the foot with our plans for next week. And this whole watch episode 9, then podcast it, then watch episode 10. It's like, it's going to take 3 hours, but that's going to kill me.
We're just going to have to do it.
That's going to be the longest 3 hours of my life.
We're just going to have to do it.
I mean, I know, but dude. So, what was your best bit?
My best bit was the bit that gutted me most, which was the lead up to Alec and Jace embracing in the Mindscape.
Yeah.
That Alec picking his way across that room full of Clary corpses and the beautiful choke in his voice and that outstretched hand and Jace's hesitancy and his reluctance and his desperate relief, and then the sunshine and the bodies being gone. Just that sequence was just beautiful.
Yep.
Just beautiful.
That was my bit also. That bit was really good.
Yeah, they were both so good.
Absolutely stunning.
And I was remembering as I was watching it, Dom's beautiful performance at the end of 203 and that gorgeous moment the two of them had at the end of 203 and on the rooftop. It was like, they do such good work when they're given the emotional and time space to do so. They just work so beautifully together.
No, absolutely.
This is why the Parabatai bond is something that is still something that I hang on to with both hands and want to keep on exploring, keep on talking about, because there are precious few of those moments, but those moments when they appear are some of my highlights of the show.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, it just gorgeous.
Who was your MVP?
It was Dom. I feel like he needs to have it this week. But I do think that Isabel was awesome.
Yeah.
I loved her this week. And both Matt and Emerald did some truly beautiful work this week.
Yeah, I thought you were going to try and get away with picking the Lightwoods.
I was tempted to. If Dom had been working any less hard than he clearly was this episode, I would have. But I think he deserves to be singled out for his work this episode.
Yeah, it's absolutely done for me. I mean, to be fair, I don't think you get to make me cry this many times before breakfast and not get an award for it, but...
To be fair, the before breakfast bit was entirely your own choice.
There was Shadowhunters to be watched. I didn't have time to stop and make eggs.
Yeah.
But yeah, God, watching him sob and choke, and it is just the work that he put in.
Yeah.
And that level of vulnerability as an actor is just gorgeous.
Yeah.
Absolutely gorgeous.
Have you got a hint and a quote for our lovely listeners this week?
I do, but not in that order.
Yes.
My hint for this week is an unexpected punch in the Parabatai feels. What about you?
I'm not sure how patently obvious this hint is, but my hint this week is challenge accepted.
Okay.
Have one for free on me this week.
I mean, this was a really tough episode. I think they deserve a freebie.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. All right.
So that was everything from us this week. Just to remind everyone, next Friday as normal on the 18th of May with episode 9, and then the Monday after the 21st of May with episode 10.
Yes.
We are also doing our season 3A roundup, which we have scheduled to be 2 episodes because we've learned from the past.
Yeah, we are assuming it's going to be 2 episodes. We obviously do reserve the right to change our minds later, but we'll keep you posted, and definitely there will be one the week after next.
At which point, because we're in a hiatus, we're going to go back to Tuesday posting schedule.
Yes.
To hopefully fill the Shadowhunter gap a little bit
Just a
for you
smidge.
lovely people.
Yeah.
So our 3A roundup will be out on the 29th of May. So please do make sure if you want to say something in a roundup, if you have anything you want us to talk about, if you have any comments, any questions, anything, ideally about Shadowhunters, but we'll have a stab at other stuff, to get your stuff to us by the 25th of May.
Something like that, yeah. Obviously, also, we will be doing our standard MVP of the season, best bit of the season, favourite episode of the season, and we'd be thrilled to know yours too.
Best cry of the season.
Yes.
So yes, do get in touch with anything that you want to chat about, and otherwise we will talk to you next Friday.
Yes, we will.
Have a good weekend.
Have a really, really good weekend, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you for listening to this episode of The Descent is Easy. If you'd like to support us, please head over to iTunes and leave us a rate and review. Alternatively, come follow us on social media and help spread the word by liking and sharing our content. You can find us on Tumblr under The Descent is Easy podcast and on Twitter under Descent_is. For more information, see fascinationandfrustration.com. Thank you very much for listening.